we're going to have 6 in a minute.
Is this Rich? No, it isn't. Welcome to the April 13th meeting of the Historic District Commission. The board's actions in these matters have been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or it will be deemed waived. Just for the fun of it, I'd like to introduce our members again. We have Dr. Dan Brown, who's not here yet. So I have Martin Ryan
Good evening.
and Reagan Rudig.
Good evening.
Next to me is Nick Cracknell.
Who are you?
I'm going to
forget
wait
yourself.
till the end. I'm waiting till the end.
All right. Yeah, good evening, and I'm from the planning department.
Yes, you are. And our city council member, Rich Blaylock, is soon to be here within a minute or two. Margot Doring.
Hello.
And David Adams.
Good evening.
So Karen Buffard is out tonight, and also Heinz Sok Schubert is off to have a procedure. So we hope him well. So we're going to move on to our administrative approvals. And Nick, would you kindly take over?
I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
So we have tonight 5 administrative approvals. 687 Middle Street, 123 Congress, 333 State, 130 Gates, and 99 Bow. Does anybody want to pull any of these out as having either a conflict of interest or wanting to discuss in more detail any of the 5? Otherwise, I'll start at the beginning.
Yeah, I hope not.
No, we good? Good. Okay, 687 Middle Street. This is a application to install a generator in the rear yard of this property. I'll try and get you a map on the screen. I don't believe, other than some existing landscaping that's in the area. Hang on. That's the bypass back there. I believe it was the rear, but now I'm looking at the map and trying to figure that out. This is the location they'd like to install it, next to the meter socket and the gas line coming into the house. Let me just see if we can, there's already condensers in this location that have been previously approved. So this is where they're proposing to put the generator. You can see they're not screened, either probably because they didn't need it at the time it was permitted. Meets the dimensional setbacks under zoning, so.
But there's no additional tubing or going up the house, side of the house. correct?
I don't believe so. I believe it goes right into
No,
the
generator.
box in the basement.
And here he is.
Any questions on that from the board? No?
No.
Okay.
We're on our second administrative approval. No problem.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Literally practice only.
No problem. Okay, the second one is 123 Congress Street. We just did an administrative approval, or maybe it was a public hearing in the last couple of meetings on the loft in the same block, same building in the same block. And these folks would like to install in front of their business the same gooseneck lighting that was approved for both the loft and the French bakery that's there. So it's the lights without the wire guards that are shown on the second sheet. I'm not sure which of those two it is, of the gooseneck lamp. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but
Probably
probably
the
the
extended.
short one.
No, probably the
I think so.
extended one, looking at the illustration.
Of the others?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if that matters, stipulated, otherwise, all I know is they're not doing the wire guards.
Okay.
Okay. Third one, 333 State Street. They're
Wait,
doing.
Sorry, can I?
Yep, go ahead.
For that, it looks like they've got some conduit that they're showing.
Yep.
Do we want to stipulate that the conduit be painted? If the conduit is on the outside, at least be painted to match the
Sure. Why?
background?
What were you talking about wire guard then?
Oh, the
There.
wire guard on the
See how
lights,
those-
not
some
those
of
lights.
have wire guards.
Oh.
It's that
Yeah.
one.
Oh, yeah, okay, I understand.
Okay, so the conduit should be painted. to-
Certainly.
To match the siding.
Building.
Yeah, siding material. Okay. So 333 State, which is the TD Bank, the building built in the 1980s with the drive-through, doing a full sort of, I guess, restoration, you'd call it, on that building. And they are replacing the incandescent lighting underneath the drive-through portion of the building with LED lighting. That's the only reason they're here. Everything else is in kind, so it's very incidental. Anybody have issues? Okay, 130 Gates. 130 Gates is seeking to replace 2 replacement Brosco windows that are apparently rotten and in disrepair, but they're replacement Brosco windows from the 70s. They'd like to replace them with the same grille pattern, double hung, simulated divided light, 6/6, but a Marvin Integrity window, which is the fiberglass paintable. You know, so the only thing I could think of is whether you wanted them field painted or not, but that's, oh, and one door, I guess they got a door there as well.
Is this the corner of, is this Gate and Marcy? No?
Dave, is 130 that low?
Gates and Marcy, no, it is not the
No.
corner of Gates
It's
and
not
Marcy.
that one, no.
Or anybody have anything you want to say to that?
No, I don't have any problem with it.
All right, well, I'll move to the next one, we can always back up. So 99 Bow Street, the last administrative approval, they are seeking to modify the previously approved project, and I believe there's 3 or 4 changes that are represented in the drawings. The first is the reducing the overall deck size by about 543 square feet is the reduction. And I think the lion's share of that reduction, as shown on the illustrations, is on the far side of the deck, where the condo association that was concerned about a whole raft of things here, it's been pulled back from their side of the project. So that's number one. The public deck area has been increased by nearly 500 square feet, as again, part of this process, TAC and Planning Board. So it's more than, I think, doubled in size. And then 3, they've removed all sculpture and artwork that was proposed to bookend that deck, and they're going to replace that with the railing system to match the railing that was approved.
That's too bad.
Yeah. And the 4th and final was some very minor changes to the planter locations. No additional planters, just a shift as the shape of the deck changed.
I had trouble finding
Let me pull it
the
up.
actual plan that shows this, because it looks like there's a lot of the previous application and the existing
Yep.
stuff, and
I believe the first set of plans, yes,
like
there are many
2015.
sheets here, like 50.
yeah.
They wanted to be thorough and include every previous decision, but here, I think, is where you're seeing the deck pulled back from the
Okay,
end
so
of the
that's
building.
what they're proposing here.
Yeah, that's the main reduction, if you can see the grabber up there, this area down here. And the public viewing area, which you can see better,
Yep.
a subsequent drawing, is increased in size. Try and get there. This area here is nearly double what it was last time, and the sculpture was here and here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is very good.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
it's responsive to,
Fine.
yeah.
So if anybody doesn't understand what's happened here to this large deck, there were some complaints about it, but they have reduced the size of the deck, and they've increased the size of the public deck, which is fully accessible without having to go to a restaurant.
Correct.
So, in that way, it's good.
That's it? So I've got one stipulation to date for number 3,
Paint
with the
the-
conduit.
Paint the
I
conduit.
think that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the windows are already half-screen in the application for gates.
Great.
Wow, that's good. Does anybody have any comments, or just want to make a motion?
No. Yeah.
I'm just going to abstain from the 99 Bow Street, just,
Yeah, recuse.
yeah, recuse myself, sorry.
All right, fine, then I will move that we approve 99 Bow Street as presented.
Very good.
At you.
Right, very good.
Second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And so let's have a motion on the rest of the package.
I move that we,
Mr. Blaylock voting.
I move that we approve 1 through 4, I guess,
Yep.
with the one stipulation.
Conduit be painted.
The conduit be painted.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, there you have it. So we now have some new business, a public hearing. Petition of Market Wharf Condominium Association owner for property located at 33 Deer Street, wherein permission is requested to allow renovations to an existing property, extend the third floor decks, replace balcony railings, lighting, and miscellaneous improvements as per plan on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 119 as Lot 1B, lies within the Character District 5 and Downtown Overlay and Historic Districts. So who here is to present this?
Joshua Buckus, Mogul Stefano Architects of Portsmouth.
Right.
So we had walked through this before in public hearing, and it is, for the most part, exterior improvements, replacing railings and finishes in kind to match existing. One of the key areas that we're here to discuss is the extension of the deck at the rear. Were there any specific questions that the board had, or would you prefer I just walk through sheet by sheet?
Just
A quick walkthrough, I
walk
think
through.
is.
Right.
Yeah.
So sheet number 1, we're showing the two buildings located at the property, 33 Deer Street. On the right is Building A, on the left is Building B. The deck extension that we'll get to is at the rear of Building A. On sheet 2, we're showing exterior improvements. Top left is showing how we're going to address concrete retaining walls with a TimberTech, it's a synthetic board screen to beautify that. We're also going to update the railings and stair treads and risers back there to match. Same thing, synthetic board finish. The upper right is showing at garden level how we're going to update HVAC screens along with the concrete retaining walls at rear. So this is really just a beautification of that, the condo owners' spaces at the
I have a-
garden level.
I have a quick question, if you
Yep.
don't mind. Are you going to put this stuff in so that there's some breathability, so that it doesn't totally just degrade the concrete behind it? And
100%.
Okay.
So the plan there's two different systems being worked here. So with the retaining wall, the plan is to put breathers, nail breathers to the concrete, and then to apply with some small air gap. I think we have 1/4 inch spec right now, but the builder will confirm on site with what looks appropriate for the scale on the wall. And so that'll give some space for breathability, and just I think it's a better aesthetic than everything just being tight up on the wall.
Okay.
And then similarly with the vertical screening that we have, so a similar material quality, but a change in orientation just to give some change up to the space back there. That'll be spaced out to allow airflow around the HVAC units below.
Great.
So moving on to sheet 3 of 7. We have 2 different ceiling treatments, exterior ceiling treatments. So in certain locations, we're going to be replacing to match existing. There is almost like a real wood finish AZEK product that we're going to be using and trimmed out in white AZEK. And then underneath the new deck extension, going to be using a product also by TimberTech called Dry Space. It's currently used on the building at the lowest level underneath the balcony, so we're just going to take that and use it at the rest of the rear deck extension. Any questions there? Great. Sheet 4, we're showing around the building, we're replacing all the railings on the building to match a very specific railing that is existing on site. So at left in the middle, there's a railing that says existing railing on site. This is a black aluminum Regal Ideas railing, and the client would like to replace all, and it should be said that these are guardrails because they're at certain balconies and stair locations around the building with that black Regal Ideas railing. One of the stipulations that the board requested in our work session was that those front balconies had a wider, like more proud corner post, and the manufacturer for this actually makes a 4x4 post. So at that specific location, because that had the wider post to begin with, we're going to replace those corner posts with the wider 4x4 posts, and that's covered in the specification sheet further down. Any questions on that one? Great. Sheet 5 of 7 is highlighting the area increase that they're looking to extend that rear deck. So this is at the 3rd floor. So in the top 2 images where you're seeing them again converting that white railing to black railing, the client would like to extend the condo private balconies up there, that deck, out 3 feet. And then on the underside, again, cover that with the TimberTech dry space to provide coverage for those 2 entries you can see. And then some further coverage for the deck space below and the garden space below that. Any questions on that one? Great. The next 2 sheets are specifications. So again, top left, we're talking about the railing system we're using and the corner post next to that on the right. The bottom 3 specifications there, the left covers the exterior ceiling, the one that's being replaced that's got sort of a real wood feel. And then to the right of that, we've got the screens and stair risers. So the stairs will have color contrast. And then we've got decking and treads at the far right. So all the exterior decking will be replaced with that, and all the exterior stair treads will be replaced with that. And then on the final sheet, we're showing the lighting fixtures that we'd like to replace in kind. So they're existing. We're not adding any new. We're basically replacing existing floodlights, existing sconces around the building with an updated lighting aesthetic that we feel aligns with the rest of the updates. At lower left, we're showing planters that we've called out previously, I think in the earlier sheets, of where we'd like to add new planters and beautify both the garden level and the street level. And then the lower right is an image of that TimberTech dry space that'll be applied underneath the new deck extension. Any questions?
Just be sure I have my orientation correct on sheet 4 of 7. The front railings, are these, any of these front on Deer Street?
They are.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's what I thought. So these will be the only black railings,
Yep.
the only black things on the Deer Street side?
The railings on the building you're referring to? Yeah. There are black railings across the street and on other buildings. And then there are side balconies as well. So from Deer Street, you can actually see the side balconies in between and on the sides. And as you travel down to the corner, you can start to see around the rear. So the desire there is to have one railing aesthetic around the whole building.
Thank you.
I was reading this, that the front was going to remain white.
We had originally, so the first recommendation was to go all black. In the hearing, we had talked about possibly going white in the front, and then upon review with the client, the builder, and going back to the initial advice from HTC, we decided to do a uniform aesthetic around the whole building. So when we resubmitted this, that image is showing white, that's an old image, but the specification is just showing black for the whole building.
Okay, I guess that just needs to be clear in the,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah.
I would add also that there is some symmetry to these 3 balconies. Thinking that helps a little, the black rails. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do not pretend to know anything about it, but the lighting that you're describing, does it meet with the city's aspirational dark sky program?
Are they dark sky compliant?
That I'd have to circle back on. I don't
They're
have
gonna
the
need to be, yeah.
specification for that. Okay.
So if for any reason they're not, and you have to change it, you would have to submit an administrative approval. Okay, well, I'm going to ask if anybody,
Yeah.
Yes, Reagan.
Just a clarification for this dry space finish underneath. What's the reason for using that type of construction for underneath the extension rather than like using the sort of
Yeah, also
wood,
the real wood
AZEK?
finish.
Yeah.
So the briefest way is to word this is that in certain conditions, we actually have waterproof decks. So like those front balconies, some of the side balconies, and the rear ones that had the HVAC above, those are actual EBDM overframing. They're fully wrapped. That's a waterproof structure. The decks at rear are not fully waterproof the way that we're structuring those and framing those. There's existing framing that changes conditions throughout the rear. And in order to just add to that without rebuilding the whole thing, it creates underneath, the best way to say it would be, sort of an undulating ceiling condition that would require many broken sections of that ceiling and trim, and could be a little bit, I want to say, chaotic to some degree. So the simplest way to handle that is to do just the TimberTech dry space, which we've already used at lower levels in the building, and kind of carry that aesthetic up. And that provides one cohesive surface that performs the double function of catching the water and transporting it to an internal drain or gutter inside the decking, the new decking system.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody in the public would like to comment on this? Just an introduction, please.
Yes. Mr. Chair, my name is Attorney John Lyons. I represent Port Harbor Land, who owns the Sheridan, which is a direct abutter to Market Wharf 1 condominium, and the lot across the street that's, I think it's been before you already once to be developed. This is actually Market Wharf 1 condominium. There is a Market Wharf 2 condominium, which is actually contained within the Sheridan Hotel. The deed and easement for Market Wharf 1 provides for 58 parking spaces on this, what's now the surface lot across the street. That easement deed allows my client to relocate those parking spaces and place them in another location while development is moving forward. The proposal that's been presented, I think, to this board, and I know to the planning board as well, actually provides for those 58 spaces within the new garage. The reason that I'm here today is that my client has provided 58 temporary parking spaces within the underground garage at the Sheridan. Unfortunately, there's been some litigation that has arisen over that. My client has received notice as an abutter, and if you look at sheet 1 of 7, you'll see above the first 4 plans of building A and B, there's a reference to Deer Street condo parking. It doesn't say Market Wharf 1, it says Deer Street condo parking. We're unsure why that reference is there or why it needs to be there, but since we received notice as an abutter and there are issues pending on where the parking is located, I'm simply here today to indicate that we dispute that Market Wharf 1 has any condominium parking in the area as shown on this plan. It does in the underground garage permissively by license through my client have 58 parking spaces there on a temporary basis. I have no comment. It's up to you folks to decide on the work that's done as far as what's before you.
Thank you very much.
So here for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and look for comments and a motion. And don't forget to at least include a finding of fact or something. It's going to be fun.
And I have a couple of stipulations.
Yeah, I'll move that this application be approved as presented with a few stipulations.
You want to read the
Yeah,
stipulations?
that the lighting shall be dark sky compliant, and that all balcony railing systems shall be black aluminum, and I wasn't sure which picket system you presented. Is it the wide, narrow, or the decorative? It's included on this sheet in the top corner.
Could you repeat the question?
So you've got, it's this railing system here that
Yep.
you're proposing. I guess there are options here for the picket system. Are they wide, narrow, or decorative?
I believe this is the wide narrow that we're showing here, and I can confirm that when we submit our
I
stipulation.
think wide and narrow are two different choices.
Forgive me. We'll need to
Look-
clarify.
It
and
looks
then we
narrow. Yeah.
We'll need to clarify what this is, but this very specific system here, visually shown, is what we'd like to do.
Okay.
And so when we submit
So whatever one that is.
the clarifications, yeah,
Okay.
we'll clarify that.
All right, and I'll just say as part of the motion that we are not covering any sort of parking consideration.
Yeah. And we can, I think, believe it's, we'll circle back, but I believe it's fine for us just to remove that from the drawing.
Okay.
It might just be a
Yes.
clerical error.
So why don't we stipulate you do that?
That we remove parking label from the drawing and supply
that the
specific
only
railing
other stipulation
information.
there?
That's all I have. Three.
Okay, Dave has a-
Oh, sorry, Dave.
Do we have a second?
Dave.
I'd like to, a little bit of discussion amongst the commissioners.
Oh,
Okay, we just need a second.
Seconded.
okay. What would you like to?
I'd like to comment, as Reagan pointed out, that we had been thinking of the balustrades being installed, that were being installed on the Deer Street facade of these two buildings. We have been thinking of them as being white, led that direction by the previous work session. And I'm, not trying to pretend that I know anything, but in my mind, generalization, most of our metal fencing is black. I think that's pretty much a statement that works. Maybe the last couple of decades, we've gotten white anodized aluminum and some green aluminum, but our historic, certainly, metal railings were black. So that seems like an appropriate thing. Although these kinds of tall, sparse entry porticos appear in the early Greek revival period in our town. It doesn't mean that these are, and I know they aren't. But when we see those, they're frequently trimmed with wooden balusters and wooden rails, and therefore painted the same color as the trim color of the building that they're on, typically. Again, just making a rank generalization. And now my statement, I think I'm more comfortable with them being white than being black. I don't think this is an appropriate location for the upstairs black railing. It's just how I feel about it.
Okay. Anybody else feel strongly?
Nope.
This side of the table?
I would agree that the white would be less of an impact, and it would fade into the rest of the facade, so I could agree to that.
All right.
Are we,
Yeah, I think we have a comment onto that point. First and foremost,
We're just, we're
we're
just
discussing
trying to
amongst you.
figure out where we're
Yeah.
sitting on this.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
might not have to comment at all. What would you say, Reagan?
I think it's fine either way if the majority would like to see the white on just the Deer Street side. I'm fine with that too. I could amend my motion if That's-
Maybe. Rich?
amenable.
I think on the Deer Street side, the white is less impactful. I know normally black hides like a shadow and white will stand out like a frame. But I feel like on this side, just from these pictures given, it's hard because the proposed front one shows it's still white. So I can't, it's hard to visualize it, you know what I mean? But I feel like it would just stand out, like it doesn't on that side. It feels like it almost would, yeah.
Margot?
And then I don't see where the black ties in on the Deer Street side. And just,
Okay, so what we have here is, it seems to be a majority. Would you like us to amend this proposal so that we have white rails on the Deer Street side?
I think I'd like to clarify first, and then property manager might want to make a statement as well. Previously in our discussions, it was our understanding that color wasn't actually stipulated by HTC, it was material and profile.
It depends on if it's the color of the actual thing. If it's painted surface, you can repaint it a different color, but if it's, we can approve the actual
So you can paint them black.
finish, yeah.
So we could,
We could
Make it
stipulate
white
they be
and
white,
paint
but
them
then we
black.
can paint them black.
obviously we want to find.
You
the thing
shouldn't
that
have
is-
told them.
Yeah, well, this is, I want to be clear.
Top secret.
Yeah.
Wow, right under the
How
bus.
sensical it is.
To that end, so I understand that a wood railing, right, for a certain period of time in Portsmouth would have been built of wood and painted white. That's actually what you're seeing there. From the street side, one of the things we originally talked about with Nick when we did the site walk was that it had sort of a low value feel, right? And so a black railing symbolizes or indicates a metal railing, which is a higher value feel overall, and we feel gives a much higher curb appeal to the building. And we'll do more for that in that direction than a white railing would just to simply tie in the 3 balconies alone. So that's our stance. Do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Josh. Kevin Schultz with Port City Realty. I'm the representative for the Market Wharf One Condominium Association. Yeah, we would prefer the black railings, and as we are looking around downtown in our vicinity, there's black railings right on Deer Street across the street, and actually, all of Port Walk is all black. Same things, straight up, all black. And I noticed it seems like everybody was okay with black, and then all of a sudden, you're not. And so maybe somebody can explain why, because of feelings, that you don't want black rather than something else. But I think the important thing is what Josh hit upon. We're trying to bring a little bit of attention to the building because we have commercial businesses on the first floor. On both buildings, there's all commercial businesses, and there's a black railing now, and it really stands out as more of a value on the building. And so we're trying to, as well as bring value to the building, and it will help those businesses on the first floor.
I mean,
Is there anybody that is, besides David, that is really tied to the black railing? Or white railing? Or any railing, color?
I have a strong preference for it, but I would not
Yeah.
fall.
I mean, these are pretty small parts of the facade of this building. If they stuck out more, maybe, I would feel more strongly, but it's really just kind of almost a Juliet sort of application. Well, I mean, there are sides. It sticks out some, but not quite as much as the back. So I don't think they're new buildings too.
And I think
It's not a make or break for me.
Yeah.
No, and I agree that the black rails would add something, because actually the front of that building on Deer Street has always looked a little washed out, too plain for me. I don't know what it is, but I think the black
Exactly.
rails. So we have a motion, we have a second, public
Right.
hearing.
I did not yet amend the motion to include white on the front, so
It's
it's
not.
still black.
They're still black, okay.
And
All right,
I
all
need to-
those in
well, I
favor?
need to make a
You do.
findings of fact too.
Yes, you do.
I know, this is conservation and enhancement of property values, because it works with the whole thing. And relation to historic and architectural value of the existing structure. I think it is part of the new.
For a 30-year-old building, thank you for finding those facts. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And against?
Opposed?
Okay. So you have your permission with your black rails.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
So we have a request to postpone.
Yeah, we have two. Why don't you get those out of the way?
Okay, why don't I get these two requests to postpone? I'm going to read them, and then we'll look for a motion. When are we doing it? Next month? or
Yes.
Indefinitely?
Nope, next month.
Okay, work sessions old. We have request to, this is number B, or letter B, request to postpone work session requested by Port Harbor Land LLC, owner for property located at 2 Russell Street and 0 Deer Street, wherein permission is requested to allow the construction of new freestanding structure, 3 to 5-story mixed-use buildings as per plans on file in the planning department. Said properties are shown on Assessor Map 124 as Lot 12, Map 118 as Lot 28, and Map 125 as Lot 21. And these lie within the Character District 5 Downtown Overlay and Historic District. We also have letter D, which is request to postpone work session by 445 Marcy Street LLC, owner for property located at 445 Marcy Street, wherein permission is requested to allow the construction of a new single-family residence with attached garage as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 101 as Lot 3, lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. Can I have a motion to postpone, please?
So
Motion
moved.
to postpone.
Okay, second,
To
anybody?
May.
Second?
To May.
To May, yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good. Okay, I got to catch my breath after that.
We're gonna go down anyway.
Is it time?
Work session.
Work sessions. Okay, so we're going to move down to the table down here. So you'll have to give us a few minutes. I should get extra pay for that, you know. Sure.
Never tell a bunch of 12-year-olds you're gonna leave early. They won't let you.
There's all this fun stuff. Yeah.
PL 400.
Yeah, they're not very reliable.
Yeah, they're the greatest base. And the one that I've got at home is huge.
There are instructions for the microphone.
Yeah, just.
Well, this microphone is a condenser universal microphone. Just don't hit it with your papers.
I know, I'm famous for that.
Feel free to grab, move that over if you want to.
Thank you.
He was
All
one.
righty.
We'll let you know if he waves to us frantically. People on YouTube are watching this all over the world. Don't worry.
You gotta do more reading,
Yep.
more words.
Let's see, this isn't one.
Send us out.
What is this?
Where is it? It's back a page.
Yeah, that's not hard. Okay. This work session is requested by 1 Rains Avenue LLC, 31 Rains Avenue LLC, and 203 Maplewood Avenue LLC owners for property located at 1 Rains Avenue, 31 Rains Avenue, and 203 Maplewood Avenue, wherein permission is requested to allow the construction of a 4 to 5 story mixed-use building and a 5-story hotel as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 123, Lot 14, Map 123, Lot 13, and Map 123, Lot 12. Lies within the Character District 4 and Historic Districts. So, there you go. Who's here? Just in
Good
TV.
afternoon,
Good afternoon.
or good evening.
Still light out though,
It's
right?
still light out,
California.
so I'm going to the afternoon. Carla Goodnight from CJ Architects and
Evan Tormey with North Mill Pond
Certainly.
Holdings LLC.
Welcome. Okay.
So we've been working quite a bit on these buildings, and we took to heart the comments from last time, which were traditional, and work a little bit more on the massing, get some more organized massing, give us some clear direction on entry elements, and also, get a step back on North Mill Pond, or a setback.
Establish a little bit more of a presence on Maplewood, I think. too,
Yes,
was another
right,
comment.
organize that whole area. So what we'd like to do is review those massing revisions that we've introduced, and then review the more traditional elements, starting section 1, looking at the massing updates, 2, reviewing the mixed-use architecture, and 3, reviewing the hotel design architecture, which we are hoping assemble all of the more positive elements from what we spoke about at the last session. So looking at 1.1, we removed a considerable chunk of the fourth floor wrapping around that corner that is closest to North Mill Pond, and brought up the massing on Maplewood to be more of a unified three-story piece. And so that the blue areas that you're seeing there have been added and the green areas have been subtracted. We've also introduced some strong vertical massing elements in the orange to pull entry points into all three of these locations. And the top floor of the hotel has also been set back. That view is, those setbacks are further illustrated on 1.2, mostly from the hotel angle. 1.3, you can really see that significant impact that that setback on the fourth floor has made on the mixed-use building, and how the unified three-story massing just joins that all together. And then the top floor of the hotel is set back towards on Vaughn Street, but the hotel piece closest to the water was already previously set back in the earlier scheme. Looking at 2.0, some of our precedent images, just to bring in an idea of what it is that the finished building will look like for materials and so forth, and the garage, folding garage doors, we're really still looking into doing that.
Where are they, Carla, these
Huh?
folding garage doors? Are they in both buildings?
They're on 2.1, the next page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We'll wait till you get there.
I am there. You can flip
I'm there
over.
also.
Flip ahead.
Yes.
There we go. So this is a great view for really showing the difference from where we were and where we are now. We have the penthouse step back from North Mill Pond that was on the previous scheme. That has been further enhanced by the fourth floor step back from North Mill Pond, and then everything has been given a much lighter clapboard finish, which really sets it apart from the first three levels below, where we've introduced the traditional horizontal masonry banding and brick core soldier detailing. And then we also have the residential double hung windows and traditional masonry sills and lintels, and then the entry massing piece.
And we're
So-
proposing there on that first floor along Maplewood, that's where those garage doors might, operable doors might be in the storefront areas.
Those large glazed sections,
On Maplewood.
right on Maplewood.
Opening out to that
What are
seating.
these two on the left, down towards the mill pond?
That is the drive-under garage lift
So that's
system.
just entirely open?
It has the gates in the front of it, and it has a valance, which we have a close-up coming up of that. In a couple more pages, we have the close-up of that area. So moving on to 2.2, we carry that architectural style around the corner, framing the storefronts in masonry, more traditional masonry finish. Horizontal storefront banding carries almost all the way around, interrupted only by the vertical entry massing. And again, these traditional elements carry through and, you know, really have a very, I think, a much more the Portsmouth vibe, I hope, that everybody's looking for a little bit there. Then moving on to 2.3, you can see the look of the recessed balconies and the banding carrying around, and simplified, everything's simplified. We don't have a lot of different things going on. Someone at the last meeting had mentioned that the rhythm on the original elevation had made it appear smaller, and then certainly introducing the entry massing breaks it up significantly into smaller chunks. So I think that was a positive change. And then looking across the water at 2.4, the whole, that whole leg of the building is much more subservient to North Mill Pond than it was in our last expression. So, and again, you can see that fourth floor stepped back all the way around and then unified with the other elevation. And the penthouse, again, very light and clapboard sided. So looking at 2.5, there is the, we hadn't looked at this in a while, so I wanted to make sure that we brought that back in since we're looking at that 360 with the proposed view in the upper left corner of how the system would work and the clearances needed. It really doesn't need a high clearance, so we're bringing a screen down, and then we also have the gate fronts as part of that system.
So the gates won't be yellow?
No.
No.
This gray?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we're thinking that could also be an opportunity maybe for some sort of decorative paneling or something on there.
Which we can explore that in materials portion of the process. Go ahead.
Talk about,
Sure.
should we stop and talk about this?
Yes, that's a good idea. All right. Is there a page we want to be looking at, or?
I'll start on 2.1.
Okay.
I think, first of all, I think the massing changes you've made here are very positive. I think this section of the building, which, yes, makes it step down towards the mill pond a little bit, is in the right direction. I think what you've lost here, though, is the sense that this front part, this lower front part of the building that's on Maplewood is sort of its own smaller structure. Now it looks bigger because you've extended the brick all the way down. So now it looks like a big building that's on Maplewood. So I don't know if there's a way to figure out how to.
I think that could easily be accomplished with that, making that door, that entry door, more prominent in the transition. Something there
Something
could
like
really
that
help.
to break it up. I think that was what I really appreciated from the previous design, is that you had this smaller mass that looked like its own little building that was a little bit more appropriate to be right on Maplewood, and now it's grown. So, so that's my comment there. Overall, I know that there's been this great big push to be more traditional and to simplify everything, and that's what you heard a lot of, and I see that's what you've done with it, and now, in my opinion, this now looks really boring. So, which is what happens, and it looks like, kind of the boring other things that keep going up because everybody wants brick and everybody wants simple. So I'll just throw that out there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Martin?
Yeah, I can agree. That's one of the things when I looked at 1.1. I go, oh, a beautiful little building on the end there. It's nicely shaped. A nice little. And then when you look at the rest of it, you look at what we just looked at 2.1. Oh, it got kind of sucked into the rest of the massing. So, yeah, I'm sure there's a way to distinguish that, give us that beautiful little,
The blue volume.
yeah.
I know,
And-
do it blue.
Yeah, it's a little dull. I mean, it can use some features that give it some expression. The parapet, if looking at 2.1, I think it looks kind of squashy there. You get the top of the head of the window, you got a band, you got, all of a sudden it terminates. I think it needs a little bit of a parapet. Besides, I think it'll help that section of clapboard at the top. That kind of looks like an afterthought and not as congruous with the rest of the building. I think a parapet would help hide that a little bit. And also, I'm going to say this about the hotel as well. that looking at 2.2 and the entrance, these multiple story gestures, I don't think help the project. I think they're too big for, I think you can still have a really interesting sense of entrance if this thing is only 1 story high, or, just slightly past the first story. I think these are gestures that belong on bigger buildings, and we haven't
Mr.
gotten to the.
Ryan, I'm sorry, what page are you on?
I'm on 2.2.
2.2.
That's not the hotel.
That's not the hotel, though.
I know. but-
Okay,
but the
I
same
was thrown.
things-
It repeats itself.
I was thrown.
The same thing is
Okay.
on the hotel, and I think you can get away with a beautiful little cornice entrance that's only 1 story high, and you carry the rest of the facade across the. I just think these are gestures that belong on much taller buildings, and yeah.
Even a projected canopy or something over that door.
Yeah.
Just sort of break that horizontal band to give it a little more presence.
Also, your example that you show on 2, the penthouse, it's got a much more heroic sort of look to it. The overhangs.
The stepped.
Yeah. And this project wouldn't
Deco.
suffer if it had that. I'll stop talking.
Okay, over
That is a
here.
nice detail.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased with the overall sense of boringness that has introduced. Beat me with that stick. This is almost worn thin by having been done over and again. But I can hear my words. This is what I wanted to see all along. So, I mean, this is what I think I'm boring. I think we hit it. I think I am. I like what happened to the thing on Maplewood. It became a Maplewood present thing. I agree that there's something if we look at 2.1 and we look at the extreme left-hand side or elevation of this little piece on Maplewood, it blends into the rest of the building. And I'm not trying to cut down on square footage, but if it broke so that it looked like it's a standalone 3-story building, which it does from the other 2 directions, I think that's what Mr. Ryan was talking about, and wore itself a little bit of roof, maybe something that provides a little counterpoint to the penthouse extension on the roof. I think that would give us a Maplewood Avenue presence that up to this point, I think the project has lacked. And otherwise, the brick, the separate windows, the rhythms, the horizontal band on the first floor. I'm a sucker for boring. Yeah, this is the best I've seen on this site.
Any other boring comments here?
Comment, Mr. Chairman. I do like that you guys have scaled this down a lot. I wouldn't mind, I think the most important part of the scale is on the Maplewood side, because there are houses across the street there, and then there's water views and stuff like that. So, and everyone's very sensitive when they're driving in or out of town, that they can see the water as quickly as possible. I wouldn't mind that 3-storied structure on Maplewood if that was only 2, or if that would break it up from the rest. Obviously, I know that's not the game that you guys want to play, but those are my biggest concerns. Is the massing on that side, because that is, you can see some of the images that it is a 2-story house right across the street. And it's the same way on the other side of the water. And it's the same way on all 3 sides of that bridge, except for that one. So that's my biggest concern, I guess.
Okay.
Argon?
I continue to have overall concerns of the mass of the building, even though you've moved parts of the mass from point A to point B. I still think it's a massive building for this location. I think the view off of Maplewood when you come across the river, the water, and I think that view continues to be less than inspiring, and it is the gateway It is the first thing people see. And one of the features I liked about 111 Maplewood is that they made that corner an entrance. They put a park in front of it, they put a retail entrance in front of it, they made it curved in a way that invited you in instead of poking out at you. And this is a harsh corner that doesn't say, "Welcome to Portsmouth," to me at all. The garage doors read like garage doors. I don't find anything welcoming about a garage door. They'll be up sometimes, but not 7 to 8 months out of the year. So, what are we looking at in the harsh of winter? We're looking at garage doors. I think that Rich has a good point, that if you can possibly step back the top floor of the third floor section, that would be a little more respectful to the house across the way. If you look at 2.4, you can see that the relationship of that house, and if it stepped down towards that, I would even be happy to see a little bit of increase to the penthouse above that to offset, move it from here to there. I'm making all of these comments because I feel like I need to recognize the changes that you've made, but I am still going to repeat that I think this building is too big for how close it is to the mill pond. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to make a few comments. I, like some others, appreciate the way you've gone with the traditional styling, and I appreciate the windows with their granite lintels and window sills. I think that you were going in a good way on the Maplewood Avenue side, but then fell apart at the very end. But I realize that this is still a premature drawing here, but it is rather boring on the front on Maplewood Avenue. And if you could eliminate the third story on it, it might be something that would win you a lot of friends. I know, what you're doing is, you've shaved back some of the fourth floor and you've lost a few square feet. So you're making it up here. Because originally there wasn't this three-story building here. I can see that the fourth floor and the penthouse, there's something awkward about the two of them together on top of each other like that, with the same material. I can't put my finger on it. I can just say that to me it looks awkward. Maybe it's just because you've got it, white, you're trying to show us that it is indeed lap siding, and because it doesn't have to be painted white.
It may be a proportion.
Yeah.
I think we have a little proportion adjustment.
And
to
also,
do there.
I agree with Martin that you don't need that three-story entry on the Rains Avenue side. I'm sure you can come up with something a little more creative. Also, on Maplewood, the two-story one that's there, I mean, you're just calling, you're taking a whole swath of the building and calling it a vertical element. I don't like that, And here's a vertical element. You should be able to give this some detail, to give it so that it amplifies the front door, or, something besides just being using darker brick. That's all you're doing. You got red brick, you got darker brick, and we're supposed to really appreciate the darker brick. I think it needs a little bit more work on that, but I don't mean to tear it all apart. I think in general that you are going in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, should we continue? Or?
I was just going to say, I think we heard a lot about that Maplewood, making that a stronger
Yeah.
presence, and I think we sort of assumed 3 stories would sort of help make that. Honestly, we weren't maximizing square footage. I think we've spoken before that
I didn't
by
mean to say
zoning,
that.
yeah, but by zoning, there's 30,000 square foot footprints allowed on these sites, and
Yeah.
we're half that. And so, and we could have 100,000 square feet here, and we're talking about much less than that.
You're on my Christmas card list.
So, but I think those are some really good points about the entries and looking at detailing that rather than bringing this mass up 3 stories and what we can do to bring that to more of like a 2.5-story presence on Maplewood versus just the solid 3. So I think there's some.
I understand that Maplewood is, much of Maplewood is 2-story buildings, and this 3rd story is not in conflict, but is different than that. On the other hand, those 2-story buildings aren't backed up against a 4-story building or a 5-story building. And I think that, I'm trying to be as progressive in my thinking as I can, but I think that this 3-story is going to read like a 2-story compared to the building that it's against, rather than some, but you're absolutely right about the other buildings.
Yeah.
We are, I don't know, maybe we aren't being sensitive enough to the wood structures that are across the street from this, but when you think about this 5-story building potentially being constructed there, a 2-story building in front of it's going to look like a canoe.
Yeah.
I also, along with Mr. Wyckoff, had no heartburn, but wondered if that dark brick stripe with just the 2 lone windows in it is not enough, particularly for a modern building, for a building that is trying to have some chops, some modern chops. That maybe this is the place that really something, as Mr. Wyckoff says, and I'm a big believer in front entryways, I think that something more light could be done there.
Okay.
Maybe, oh gosh, this might be the place for the glass tower, or something like that.
Okay.
I'm trying.
Are you okay?
He's never said those words before.
Anyway, trying to be good here.
Mirrored?
More glazing? More glazing?
Do you think, we talked about sort of on the Maplewood, I mean, the pond side, how that corner sort of just blends in and connects. If it was still 3 stories, but just a little subservient to the rest of the building.
I think that's,
broke there.
I think that way would allow it, as Mr. Ryan suggested,
was just-
to have its own roof.
Corner was taken
If it was broken away, it looks like it's broken away on the right-hand side.
My thing is
Yes.
Here.
And I'm not saying that it needs, a whole bay or 10, 12-foot setback, but a bit of a break would allow it to have its own roof, as Martin has suggested, and I think a lot would happen there.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if even some sort of, again, I am not a designer, but, a horizontal or some sort of datum point to reference the height of the building across the street in there. In the detailing somewhere could at least just like say, okay, we see you, that,
Right.
right.
One more.
I would just add that I don't think it needs to lose a story. I think, given the width of it, and the almost sense that it's its own, that we would hope it would become its own
Becomes
little
its own
building.
building?
That
Which may or may
it's
not be
right,
modern.
it's the right height. And I want to choose a different word than boring. I mean, you could use that word. I think comfortable is an appropriate word, and there's I'm comfortable that this fits in, that this is appropriate, and that's not a bad thing, and I think it's on the right track as well.
Well, thank you. I think
said
we,
boring, and I'm going to stick to it.
well, I think we talk about that quite often,
Yeah.
where we, swing all the way this way, and we swing all the way that way, and, we find
Boring
that
is
happy.
just such a subjective term. You could be, it could be because your stomach's upset, and, this is boring.
Ooh, hold the thought.
I know it. I would say that, I think, David, you mentioned it, maybe 3 stories is all right on that front. It's not overpowering. That's not what I was trying to say, that Maplewood is not overpowering. It just doesn't, it's boring.
And it's set back from the street a little ways too, as well, which
Yeah.
helps.
That would help. Okay, do you want to start at 2.5?
Sure.
Meander forward?
All right.
3.0.
Oh,
That's earlier.
no, we were.
3.0.
Mr. Wyckoff, from the audience?
Oh, well, so we'll
We have
have
at the end,
public comment after, yeah, okay, thanks.
another 20 minutes. Okay. Where are we?
We are on 3.0. On 3.0, we've picked up on a slightly more exciting detail, which has the brick texture, a little bit more modern element, and then some of the proportions of the building on the lower left, I think, work very well. So if you flip to 3.1, you can see that we've introduced that texture at the first floor, wrapping it around the hotel building, introduced an overhang on the setback top floor. The entry massing frames that were somewhat appreciated at the last meeting have been refined a little bit more for this round. And then the corner element has picked up in those same materials to reflect that. We did introduce the brick, more traditional horizontal masonry banding, sort of folded into that as well, for just to blend the two together. Looking at 3.1, we certainly have sense of entry coming down Vaughn Street. We did not take this one all the way to the top of that form, so I think that reads okay. And looking at 3.3, I do really like how these eroded corners and these little areas of brick have been stripped away to identify certain volumes here. And then we reconfigured the larger entrance for the vehicular drive-under that is facing North Mill Pond, again, as a more symbolic, larger element. And the texture continues wrapping around, so.
Could I just ask you, how
Sure.
how did you get to this? On 3.3, you have over the garage, you have your vertical elements going up there. Now you've got me on your architectural talk here.
Mm-hmm.
But on, well, say 3.2, the entry of the hotel, it stops on the fourth floor, doesn't go up.
Right, it's more in scale, as in keeping with the smaller pedestrian entrance doors, as opposed to the larger vehicular drive lane opening on the first floor. So sort of scaled it up to accommodate that opening, and then scaled the whole proportion system down proportionally to be working for the pedestrian entrance.
Okay.
And 3.4 shows you the image across the water, which was represented on 3.3 in context. And 3.5 gives you a close-up of the horizontal banding and the textured base with the recessed elements, and then the vertical brick piers and the big frame, strong entry frame. 3.6 shows the elevation from North Mill Pond, and the corner element breaks apart the massing on the right from the massing on the left, and the massing on the left is also a story lower. And then 4.0 is the floor plans for reference. So we have this section we don't need to really review, but it helps you to, if you want to study it in greater detail. We've provided the floor plans in section 4 and the building and zoning as well for reference, but we don't need to read that verbatim.
I just want to point out on 3.6, I want everyone to look at the water. It's beautiful.
King's Tide.
It's a king tide. Well, so I live on the humble North Mill Pond, and I see this king tide 3 or 4 times a month now. You know, I see this, and I want everyone to look at it and say, oh, yeah. Okay, let's have comments on the hotel, please. Martin?
Can we go first?
Yeah.
Again, I agree, this is going in the right direction, and it's comfortable. Again, I'm not, I don't feel really great about these large gestures that they go up, they go across, and they come down in the same fashion. There's no interest in them. They're big gestures. They belong on bigger buildings. I mean, if it went up and then it corbelled out slightly, and you know that the columns were thinner than the horizontals, and that there's some detail and interest to it, you know, I could warm up to it. The same thing with the massing or the language over the garage opening. I just, if you're going to do that, I just prefer that you have just a beautiful band across that first story and bring the rest of the language across. Also, if you look at 3.1, that corner element, that's sort of very modern, I like that. I think that's very, very appealing. There's a lot of texture to it, a lot of interest, and I really don't see it appear anywhere else in the rest of the building.
Isn't it repeated in an inside corner?
The back?
On the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, back.
Well, kind of, but I think there's some.
Not to the same impact. You're
Jogs
correct.
and there's some detailing that's not appearing in that, that it'd be great to see.
Does seem like it's out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I'd like to see it repeated. But I think you took away our inspirational drawing there, you know, the one you presented that one time, and what happened? Where did that inspirational drawing, that building go from? Remember the one?
We had
I mean,
several-
you followed it in a lot of the brickwork and a lot of
I
the
think it was
body of the building.
Yeah, the red with the sort of
Yeah.
fourth floor.
Oh, yeah, the one you
Boston.
sent us the next day.
It's
Okay.
like, we're not showing them that anymore.
It's a little box. And
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, this isn't even close.
How soon they forget.
That one's very traditional.
Yeah.
But I see that
Boring.
appearing here, and I like that, and it's great. I'm not crazy about the opening over the garage and the main entrance with that little door that kind of is off to the side. That storefront it's just like, seen it before. I've seen it in 1,000 places, and yeah. That's all.
You know, the sad part about this system, Nick, before we go on any further, is we can't save these things. You know, if I wanted to look at something from March,
You actually can save it.
February, I can save it.
Yeah, they're on your iPad.
Are you
They're not
importing
on
them?
this.
You can also
I'll show you.
export it to your own laptop.
Oh, okay. Yes, Reagan, go ahead.
Well, I have a few questions. So what color is this is this greenish gray paneling? Like, what is that really?
It's charcoal.
The fifth floor and like
Yeah,
sort of a charcoal, dark zinc.
all right. Yeah, I know these renderings, the colors.
Different
get
colors on
weird.
different screens.
Yeah, and
Right.
it looks
Green color
green.
can-
Yeah, I'm just, I want to see how that, that actually looks in real life against the brick. I mean, is it the similar as to what's on the AC hotel? I mean, I'm just trying
So
to think.
this is a much darker,
Okay.
like the AC, the general body of that
Yeah.
hotel is a light, I think it's light zinc is
Yeah.
the Luca Bond color, which is very plain, very light.
Yeah.
I know, like, I wasn't in those meetings, but I know they looked at closely here, and there was, they like the contrast between the dark charcoal and the light. So this is more the dark charcoal. And there are some textured versions, and certainly, given the materials, there's a lot of different
Yeah, okay. I'm
options
just,
there to make,
Yeah.
give it some depth.
and I'm just
Samples
curious as to
of
what,
it.
yeah, I know that you always do, but I'm just curious as to what what this is intending. And then the same with the light color, so is that a similar material, just a different color?
Yeah.
Okay.
Show it
So
to
it-
them, in case they've forgotten.
There you go.
Yes,
Yeah.
there it is.
Oh.
Oh, yes.
Suddenly disappeared.
I I still think we've got some ways to go on this building. Just the contrasting colors and the design and everything, the brick maybe is too speckled and light. I don't know. There's a lot going on with the colors of what you've got up here so far. I don't mind as much these vertical elements, although the entrance over the garage really reminds me of like a 1920s deco facade on like a courthouse or something, or like, a big post office building or something. It seems very out of place with what the rest of the building is. So I don't know. Maybe it just needs different materials or detailing or something like that. But I'm still kind of like on this. It's I would love to see you explore, I think, the different materials and details that
Okay.
you've got going on.
Okay, so we've got three other folks over here. Mr. Blair?
I'll just throw, a point in. I guess, I think when I look at this building, I imagine myself standing in the front courtyard of it as the street swings around. And I wonder, which I don't get from this, how it's going to play in its neighborhood. This building right here, at least this facade of the building, is going to live inside of your modern island neighborhood. And the other side of the building on the mill pond is, and boy, it sounds like my mother telling me that the hair will grow out. Don't worry about the haircut you just got. But the other side of the building we only see from further up Maplewood Avenue or further out on Market Street Extension. It's a longer shot, much longer shot. This is the side that you're going to be right in front of. The other one's a long shot, unlike the Maplewood Avenue facade of the previous discussion.
Are you talking about 3.2 here, this one?
I'm looking at 3.1.
Okay.
But certainly 3.2 is
more in
demonstrative of that.
right, more in the
You were in this little
viewport.
space. In which case, I think you're, not to jump on this thing, but I'm not inspired by your arch openings.
Okay.
I like the identity of a doorway, no question about it. If this is what it takes, if this is what that means, then it's required. I think you need to know where the door is on something like this. The one on the other side seems less of a problem to me because I believe that the view is much different, and it does something to also mask the unnatural size of your automotive entry there. So I guess I can understand that. This one seems a little, I don't know, a little, not even Jetsons, just it seems a little bit stark and large. The corner with the new material, it does a lot to break this thing into smaller pieces, and I think that's a good thing. We're in a busy little neighborhood here. I kind of, as Mr. Ryan suggested, I kind of wonder if there couldn't be another one of those somewhere, if that isn't another useful tool for another location on this building. While I certainly can appreciate your wanting to divide this thing up, which has been somewhat successful on the back, the water side. Yeah.
Market Street side.
Yeah. But I wonder that blank, unfinished, you didn't get to the brick veneer on those concrete vertical columns. I wonder if that isn't something that could take a little bit more attention.
Yes, and I agree. I think this notched out corner, this corner eroded away, has been one of the more successful sort of peel-aways that we've done, and I think a lot of that's attributed to the windows are really breaking away from that pattern, and I think that.
But it's a staircase, right?
And the detail, that horizontal detailing where they
Is
sort
there
of
another
notch out.
staircase that you can
Yeah.
do that too?
That, yes.
That is that same, material on the backside, but I think that could use more detail, as Martin suggested, on that side, and then also, there might be another location where that works well.
Margot, Rich, somebody want to?
Yes, I do like those breakaway corners. I like that the glass, it's almost like it's not there. It's just, you can see right through it. I will agree with Reagan on the part that you drive under on the, it just looks like a big federal building. It looks like a big, brutalism.
Little over.
I have been spending a lot of time saving some federal buildings in town with some brutalism on them, but I don't know if we need more. But yeah, it gives us like, what is in here, like the CIA or something? It has this like,
Welcoming hotel.
yeah, I don't know. It's like we
KGB.
didn't do anything fun because we can't, because we're serious. But yeah, I think it could be more fun. I don't know. I like, I like Dave's point of having an entrance. But I think, yeah, it should be celebrated. It should be fun. It should be, welcoming. It should be special. It should be, why go into that door not instead of another building's door? I don't know.
All right.
Needs balloons.
All those things with the blowers and.
No, I mean, I just think of like Frank Jones. I think of like, some golden lions or no, I'm just
There
kidding.
you go.
Bitcoin.
Margot, besides the fact that it's too big, what else do you think about it?
I agree with Rich. I think that the brutal effect of this entrance, if I were driving along Market Street across the water, I would wonder, what's going on over there? What is this trying to draw attention to? And then if I found out that it was just a garage entrance, I think, that you would use that gesture, that big grand gesture, for the entrance of a garage. I also think it breaks up, in not a good way, the left side from the lower right side. And then when you see the view, you see it a little bit in 3.5, and again in 3.6, because you've continued the white around the corner at the top, you see this sort of
Yeah.
thing that doesn't really relate to anything else, sort of right up there on the roof. It looks almost like a shield of a utility area, and you think, what's going on when you look at it from that direction? I like this white corner, the interior corner. I like the one on the front.
It is less developed and needs,
Yeah.
to your point.
I agree with the comments of the framing of the front door. I think it's important to have something that says, here's the front door, but this is very delicate. But if I think in my mind, if I made it heavier, would that be good? I don't think it would because of the size, the scale of this particular facade. So if it were much shorter, if it just framed the one story around the door maybe, if it had some true Art Deco elements like carving and texture to it, then that might be interesting, but you've gone with a very traditional brick and fenestration, and so that makes it difficult to bring in that sort of Art Deco element. It's kind of, you can't have both, or maybe you could figure out a way to have both. I like the simple white corners that you've put on the corners of these buildings.
Right.
They're very understated, but they do make a difference in defining the building. Not the one with the windows, but the little ones. They're very simple, but I think they do make a difference. I wondered why you didn't include one on the broken corner. It may be too much, but I'd be interested to see what happens. If you end up with too many
Going back and
stripes.
forth on that a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
You sort of have to see it to decide, do I have too many stripes or too few stripes?
Right.
Okay, so I'm just going to get the last hit in here. The entrance. So I'm not seeing that you have enough room because of the second-story windows to really give that an Art Deco look, although I would like to see it. I would like to see that if you're going to have this traditional style building, that you can't just get by with a rectangle over the door and call that design. I think that it needs to have something, I'm not asking for Park Avenue with a doorman, but I'm asking for something else. If it's going to be modern, then, get some dramatic glass up there and some other elements that people use for, modern entry canopies, but, just a rectangle like that. And I agree, I'm not sure, how many are against it, but it just doesn't make any sense to have that little white line go all the way up to and then stop and then go across. And is this cornice that's on the brick underneath the 5th floor, is that some kind of brick element or is that metal? You're up at the 4th floor and it goes all the way around. Is that
It's brick with a metal, it has the metal cap
Oh,
flashing.
Yeah, it would have a
just
flat
cap
metal flashing.
yeah.
Yeah. So then that's not anything that would be, it wouldn't match any of these corner details that you've gotten. I'm just trying to think, if you look at, 3.3 and especially 3.4, when you've got that white vertical element, it's 4 windows in
Yes.
on the left-hand side, that just makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's just like, well, here's a white column going up for no reason. It doesn't support, doesn't do anything, it doesn't tie in with anything else. So, as far as design goes, I just don't like that. And I can't really see why that your designers have really tried to accent the garage doors. I think somebody else said that. It's a garage door. I'd try and kind of hide it. Yeah. And just forget about it, forget about it. And your building, the basic shape, I realize it doesn't have a mansard roof, but, it looks sort of like that. So it sort of has a 19th century industrial look, which is appropriate, at that particular location. And I think that, that might be the way to go myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that top floor, that 5th floor, where you say it's set back, it doesn't really look very set back. It looks like it's on the same plane and you've got that brick sort of, banding, cornice type thing, just breaking it up. So I wonder how much you've actually set it back, and could it be an element that you make into a mansardish, could it have an angle to it or something like that to give it a little bit of relief or shape up at the top.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Rick, are you talking about this setback, like the difference?
Yeah.
Right, it's
Yeah.
like barely.
Yeah,
It's
I was
only
showing
bare.
him that.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a more like a 8-inch setback. We're
Yeah.
trying to use the setback, step back terms correctly.
Here, you'll be able to see. Or that line, we're different from that line.
Yeah. That was my thought.
But in general, I feel that the building, in essence, has possibilities. And like I said, the 19th century look is not a bad thing to go for, but, so you've wanted to put some of these modern elements on it. I don't know. They're just stuck on, I think. That's it for me. Does anybody else want to get any other licks in before we open it up to the public? Okay, so if anyone in the public would like to speak about Rains Avenue, please come up and give your name.
My name is Susan Sterry. I grew up here in Portsmouth. I came here tonight just to see how the Historic District Committee works. My only comment about, because I haven't done any research on it, I am co-chair of the Cemetery Committee that Portsmouth just started. And so we're in the middle right now of getting a landscape architect involved in redesigning the property around the edges of North and Union cemeteries. We've already, a Blue Ribbon Committee redid the walls and they came out really nice. Now our next project, we're going to be cleaning the cemetery, so it's not going to be just this gray spot sitting there. As a matter of fact, May 7th, we'll be starting our first cleaning. So what looks like black blocks sitting over in the cemetery aren't going to be sparkling white, but they're not going to just be riding by seeing black blocks there. And then the edge plan that we have will tear down fences that are there, weed out the trees, put in new plantings, and bring it back to an appropriate look for the time, which was the first grave in there was probably right 1800. We haven't researched all of them. So I guess I didn't come to talk about this, but when you started talking about on that side of the street, that's what I've been working with. And they are houses that are age appropriate back to the 17th and 1800. To me, it feels like you just you sectioned out the neighborhood. So now we have this side of the road is, maybe it is industrial, I don't know. I grew up here and I don't remember seeing a lot of brick buildings down in that area, especially when they tore down all the houses on the hill there. And now then you have this opposite side that is going to remain historic looking and feeling, which is also part of the attraction and why people come to Portsmouth now, especially the genealogy. So I wanted to point out too that North Cemetery is on the National Registry of Historic Places, and that we just got the Union Cemetery approved, so that's going to go on to the New Hampshire State Registry. And eventually, we will go for all 5 cemeteries to be on the National Registry. So I guess what attracted me was when you kept saying, the look from coming down, but what's the look from the other side? I don't get it, because, most of our houses, historic houses, are all, board or stick built, and I don't mind the brick, but I just think we're going to end up with a city that's going to have, like in Boston, all these tall buildings around, and all these historic places are going to be these little pockets like parks in our city, and I don't think that's what we really want, but I'm just putting it out there as a perspective. I'm not against progress whatsoever, so, but the look is, it just feels like tall buildings sitting in the middle of Portsmouth. So that's it. I just wanted to let you know that we are working on the cemetery across the street, which is part of the aesthetics of the whole neighborhood. So
I just want you to know that I have a couple great grandparents over there.
in North or Union?
In the north, and I want you to be careful when you're cleaning the stone.
Well, come on over. May 7th is going to be there. We'll have all the equipment. Oh, and one other quick question. Is the setback, because I have a degree in environmental policy, on the water side, there is and none of that's been, I'm sure you did all the studies. There wasn't any.
Yeah, we've kept the building out of the 100-foot.
100-foot. But even any soil tested where the building's going, so it's not considered wetland even at that point in time?
Nope, it's all been wetland flagged and.
Yeah, I assumed that, but I didn't know as a resident how far in, because as you spoke about the rising tides all the time, a matter of time before that's just gonna, I mean, not in the next 25 years, but going down the road.
Yeah, when it's really high, it's very easy to get on a canoe to the back of the cemetery. Yeah. You know, you don't even have to climb over rocks. You could just go right up against and step onto the...
I've been down in the flats back there because that whole wall has to be redone, so I have pictures of the wall that's been falling down and how close the graves are to some of the bare erosion spots.
Good luck with the DEP, state of New Hampshire also.
Well,
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? I haven't seen her before.
Make sure I have the right paper. Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. So the heights of the condo building on the Maplewood Ave side are supposed to be from the Maplewood Ave bridge to about where their parking lot is, 1 story, 20 feet. Then it changes, and it goes from 1 story, 20 feet to a maximum of 2 stories or 35 feet. So you get to pick. You don't get to have both. You get to pick. And that goes around the corner onto Rains Ave. So I call it the yellow section. So the yellow section starts right at the parking lot, right where that building is, and then goes right around the corner on Rains Ave. So these heights were chosen so that whatever was built there would blend in not only with the homes across the pond, but also across the street. So dropping this structure in the front by 1 story and keeping maybe some of the architectural characteristics, but avoiding it being too busy would be helpful. The height on the hotel on the corner by 3S Art Space should drop down to 3 stories. When 53 Green Street was presented, when AC Hotel was presented, and 145 Maplewood Ave, they were asked to drop down to the 3 stories by 3S Art Space. And I don't think they deserve to have any special dispensation. Because if you look at the massing, and there it is right there, you can see 3S Art Space is technically maybe 1.5, maximum 2 stories, and then you've got this 5-story behemoth next to it. So my thought on that was, the lines are very convenient now for me, but where that angle is and around to the other line that goes down on the backside, that whole area could drop down to 3 stories. After listening to you talk about the garage doors, I agree with that, but there are garage doors that are available that don't look like garage doors. They're like folding doors. There's some at the Thirsty Moose in Dover, and there are also some over by Chinberg's building by Pick and Pay. And they fold like accordion doors. They have brown frames, and when they're open, you don't see them, and when they're closed, they look a little less like garage doors. I liked the sad thing is that you have to open up 3 or 4 screens on your computer to be able to see all the different things. So I looked at March, and I looked at January, and then I looked at this. And one of the things I did like were the black kind of pergola type things that they had on the top floor. I didn't like them on the lower front on Maplewood Ave because it made it too busy. But I thought those might be helpful to kind of break up all the brick, those black, I don't know what they're called, but they have a name, I'm sure. I would love to see both buildings next to each other, see how it's whited out. So you can't really see what's going to happen visually when you have all of that brick going down there. I would suggest brown brick because the building across the street is orange and wood, and 3S Art Space is kind of a rust color. I'm not sure what you call that. And the other thing I thought about is how stark and how they remind me of an electric company in the early 1900s. And what's missing is anything round. Everything's straight. So like even that doorway, if you got rid of all that stuff everybody's been complaining about and made an arch over the door, and it would actually break that up in a way to make it a little softer. The buildings are just so straight, and they're straight vertically and horizontally. There's nothing to break it up. So my thought would be to add some rounding in it to kind of make it a little softer. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody online? Does that just faded away? No?
They're there, but not for this.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, I hope you got something.
I did.
We went a number of different directions.
I think that was very helpful.
Yeah. All right. So are you coming back next month?
Yes.
Motion to continue?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you.
Are they going to get the award for the toughest?
Yeah, we should know until the award ceremony.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We're in contention, just so you know.
We have several.
Class where you did.
If we don't, that one's postponed at the end, we missed 92 Pleasant.
Oh, good.
I would not read it all, I'd just say 92 Pleasant Street, working stiff is postponed.
Good. Do that?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, before we do 1 Market Square, I just wanted to say that we missed F, request to postpone. And Nick is letting me just say 92 Pleasant Street, Working Stiff Properties. So if anybody could make a motion to postpone that till next month?
So moved.
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, but I have to read this. Work session requested by 1 Market Square LLC, owner for property located at 1 Congress Street and 0 High Street, wherein permission is requested to allow renovations to an existing structure, repair and upgrade building facades along Congress and High Streets, and new construction to an existing structure, replace the rear shed addition with a new 4 to 5 story addition, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 117 as Lot 14 and 15, lies within the Character District 4, Character District 5, Downtown Overlay, and Historic Districts. And who is here to present this?
I don't think they're here.
I think they're here.
One Congress?
Let's go to the next item. They're trying to assemble the team.
Okay.
Some people are missing it.
Okay, so we're going
Take it
to...
out of order.
Yeah, out of order now, we're going to go to E, which is a work session requested by 129 State Street LLC owner for property located at 129 State Street, wherein permission is requested to allow renovations and new construction to an existing structure, which is removal of shutters, addition of dormers, roof and siding changes as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 47, lies within the Character District 4 and Historic District. Who here is to present this? Hi.
Good evening, Shane Forsley with Hampshire Development Corporation on behalf of the owners of 129 State Street.
I think the microphone should pick you up now. He's engineered it very well.
Excellent.
Where again, you have to be careful of that little boy.
All right. Well, thank you for having us again. And thank you for coming out a few weeks ago to visit the site and look at a few things that were topics of discussion since we last met. As you'll notice on page 2, we've got an itemized list of our proposed alterations to the existing structure, as well as the addition of some components to the structure. So the first item of discussion, the owner would like to remove the decorative window dressings, which we looked at in our field visit, which we can look at as we progress through the drawings. Additionally, we'd like to replace the non-historic windows with period-appropriate Anderson windows, which you'll see in the last half of the package. We've got some cut sheets for you. We'd like to add limestone sills and headers to the window openings to match the banding shown on State Street facade. You'll notice the addition of 2 skylights on the State Street portion of the roof and a shed dormer on the Schaeff Street portion of the roof, and we took some of your comments and incorporated those to make sure that the windows and stud pockets were appropriately sized, which you'll see in the details. We've continued to refine our design of the oculus on the main ridge of the roof, which we can look at in detail. We've added a hip roof to the rear portion of the modern structure. We show a pediment option in the elevations for the main entry door, and we discussed a few things on site which we can talk about further, whether or not we want to maintain the existing pediment or look at slightly redesigning it. We intend to replace the existing asphalt roofing with synthetic slate. We've provided some cut sheets at the back end of the package for you. As shown in the elevations, we've reconfigured the pedestrian and vehicular entries off Shafe Street to better suit the use of the space. We would like to replace the existing siding, which is vinyl, with period-appropriate Collaborator composite. You'll see that in the details. And the addition of some exterior lights at the pedestrian entries, garage entries, and flanking the balconies shown up on the second floor of the addition. If you jump ahead to page 3, Nick, you'll see an artistic rendering of what we propose to do with the property at State Street. You'll notice on the State Street facade and the facade that faces the J. Smith Park.
For some reason, that maybe didn't scan.
We have it.
You do it?
Yeah.
Uh,
Go to the previous page.
Previous page.
What do we have here?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I stapled mine out of order. So you'll see the removal of the shutters in the window dressings on the State and I'm going to call it the garden facade. Additionally, you'll see the limestone headers and sills added, new windows. You'll see the oculus poking through the leaves on the tree, as well as some reconfiguration of the existing addition at the back of the garden area. On next sheet, you'll see some more change. The reconfiguration of the garage door and the pedestrian entry essentially flip-flop. There's addition of windows, dormers, and a new roof in between the original building and where the addition now sits, where you'll see a small hip dormer coming off as well. Jumping ahead to A2.1, which should be page 9. You'll see the existing and proposed elevations. On the left, that is Shafe Street.
A 2.1.
You give me a chance to get, okay, got it.
We don't jump that quickly.
I'll slow down.
Yeah, a little
right.
bit
All
on
right.
jumping.
So on the left, you'll see the Shafe Street facade. A few items to note, starting at the top, 7-foot diameter oculus with a 6-inch reveal above the ridge. Lead-coated copper sidewalls on that oculus. You'll notice we've added a shed dormer on Shafe Street, which you've seen in the previous packages. We've properly spaced it with a double 2x stud pocket in between the windows. Both on the shed dormer and on the mulled windows above the pedestrian entry on the right-hand side. We've spec'd Anderson E-Series windows, and you'll notice lanterns, or lights, I should say, above the garage doors. On the right-hand side, the State Street facade, obviously the window dressings and appliques have been removed. You'll also notice 2 skylights on the original building, 3 feet by 4 feet, low profile fixed skylights. There's a cut sheet at the rear of the package. And you'll see the new limestone sills and headers added. There's a note on there. There is a metal rail proposed on the balcony on the modern addition, as well as some metal paneling in the lower portion, which we propose to enclose. And I'll stop there and let you guys take a look and ask any questions.
Where is this metal
You're still
panel?
on A2, right?
Yes, A2.1.
2.1.
I would love to, I wasn't able to make the site walk, so I would love to have anybody talk about it.
Sure.
Anyone? Who was there?
I couldn't make it.
Well, it was obvious that at one time it was a plain building, that we did notice that the bricks had been painted or coated or covered with whitewash or limestone, or whatever that they might have used in those days to cover the bricks. And that went underneath the decorative elements on the windows. So the one window that he had removed, you could see that this color went down. There were obviously no limestone, lintels, windowsills and stuff like that. So it's my guess, by looking up and down the street, we couldn't help but notice that the large buildings that are going down State Street, the large 3.5-story apartment or whatever they were at the time, tenement buildings or whatever, one of them that used to be owned by Mr. Dodge, and that those buildings had that type of element over their windows, decorative elements. Apparently on those buildings, they were some kind of brownstone or limestone, or we don't know, but they were some sort of stone, and you said that Mr. Dodge had actually recreated one out of wood. The feeling is that what we were talking about is that these things were added as a way of upgrading the building in the 1860s or whatever. They were attempting to bring the building up, very similar to what happened to the buildings next to the Athenaeum, that were turned into 3-story buildings with large windows. So that's about all that I could say about that, I guess. There's no way of telling what might have been around the door. Apparently it's shown as a roof at one time, back in 1906 or whatever. I don't know if that's available for anyone to drag out of their memories, but that we don't know what that originally was, if it was anything at all. So that's all I've got to say.
One of the things that I was concerned about, and Mr. Wycott's correct, all of that was my observation too. One of the things I was concerned about was we were removing one part of massive renovation to the building because it didn't suit our early 19th century aesthetic, in leaving other parts that were other parts of that massive redefinition of the building. There is no particular reason to believe that the raking trim that's on the courtyard side or the doorway itself are part of the decorative window treatment moment. There's nothing that ties those elements together that says that they have to go and therefore come and go together. I don't believe that there's any rational reason to tear the woodwork of the cornice and the doorway out just to satisfy some other kind of I'm not certain aesthetic. But to say that these elements that were put on the windows certainly appear like they came by themselves. Mm-hmm. And your opinion of that is but there's clearly the building had a history before they were put on.
Mm-hmm. And the only other thing that I forgot to mention too is on the State Street side, they don't fit on the second floor. So what they have done is they took about 4 or 5 inches off of the height of these elements and shrunk them down so that they could fit with that limestone horizontal banding. You almost don't notice it, but you do.
Thank you.
Yep. So, Martin, you want to start on comments on this thing?
I think this is progressing. I didn't I wasn't able to go to the walk either. I have noticed that some of the comments about the fenestration on the smaller wood framed area, still the same, even though some comments were saying that they needed to be that needed to be reconfigured and or separate some of the windows and things like that. I'll let somebody else address, that's probably somebody else's comment. I was hoping to see more of a detail for the Oculus. It seems, my comment last time is, just seems like a piece of mechanical equipment up there, and I expected to see maybe a slight dome or something, and I don't see it. It's not completely wrong. It is, your approach to it is to sort of kind of you don't want to make a gesture, you just want it to fade in the background, and I guess that's acceptable. So all in all, I'm comfortable with how this is proceeding. I'll let others talk.
Others talk?
Yes.
Others.
I'm another. Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Martin. I think I'm pleased with how this is going. I was able to make the site walk. Shane was nice to show us, what was under the those headers there. And yeah, if we don't determine that these shutters and stuff like that was all a historic part of the building, then I don't see any reason why we would miss them. I do agree with Martin that the Oculus could be more, more of a spectacle, more of a, I don't know if you have if it's not just the, you said it was going to be copper around it?
Lead-coated
Copper. But yeah, more of a statement, I guess, more of a, I think it's super fun and it's exciting. I think anyone would, it would be cool to notice that. But, yeah.
Margot?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Reagan?
I think the changes to the new addition in the back, the L, are totally fine. They're still, the design is still very appropriate for the historic district. It's new construction. It's, I think it's very acceptable. I actually think that I think minimizing the Oculus as much as possible is actually preferable, because, if it was its original, if we knew that was the original design and it was really like an original element that we were replicating, maybe that would be something. But I think that just the hint of it is fine to see. If you don't see it, it's fine. I don't think that it should be a showpiece to this building. But I think the changes are also, knowing the history of this building, are appropriate to the building. It was, as far as we can tell, originally a workshop of some sort. It wasn't a grand residence, so keeping it very simple, having the simple headers and sills and all that stuff, even the simple doorway, I think that's fine. That's all in keeping with the building. So I don't have any real issues with anything, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And David, we haven't heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Oculus, I don't know the Oculus to have ever been anything extravagant. In the 19th century, early 19th century, they would have built a Belvedere if they wanted something extravagant, a lantern. These are, to my knowledge, there was no great amount of metalwork around them because they didn't have a lot of, at this time, decorative metalwork. It was another 50, 60 years before that came about. They certainly had little opportunity to shape glass. And so these were relatively innocuous, to my knowledge. Certainly the fragments of any that I've seen have been rendered to that point over time. So I'm pleased with that. I think the 7 foot's a bit much, but I've got no scale that says what it's supposed to be. The thing that I'm willing to live with, I guess, is the shed dormer on the back. Because I understand what that will do in terms of the livability of that space. And the Sheaf Street is so narrow, and the opportunities are so small for that to be an impact on our community. I don't see irrational reason to say no. And I'm big on irrational reasons to say no.
Say no.
But I'm thrown, I'm thrown by that shed door, the doghouse dormer on the little bump behind what is now proposed to be the garage. And I find that to be the thing I just can't defend. Everything else seems like it makes good sense. It's good housekeeping practice. It kind of a little bit of creativity and rediscovering the Oculus, and a lot of this I'm sort of behind. The doghouse dormer, I don't know if it's going to change my vote on it, but it just seems like it's yet another damn thing on the back that is hard to define why. Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
I guess my comments are, initially I was reluctant to see somebody's detailed, actually a whim that somebody decided to put on here. I've got a feeling it might have happened when they turned this into a hotel for a while, because this was used as a rooming house / hotel in the late 19th century. Maybe that's when they decided to dress it up. But, you know, looking at your federal drawings, and I think it'll be an interesting addition to see this. I agree with David, it's a little complicated on the back. What happens with that doghouse dormer? What is that? It's a little hip roof, actually.
Yeah, it's a little hip. If you look at sheet A 1.3, it'll show you the roof plan.
1.3?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So why is it there? What is it doing?
And the intention there is
Very
to
narrow.
bring light into the bathroom on the third floor.
So it could
But
be.
there is an atrium, it looks like, also in the bathroom or not?
Correct. You see that ridge skylight.
So there is light.
There is light.
And that,
And it could be a skylight
Instead of a dormer.
instead of a dormer. Does anyone else have any feeling about that dormer that David has described? You know, does anyone know where it is and all this?
I understand it.
It does,
think
it-
it's,
Understand
I think it's adorable.
it? He thinks it's adorable. You should say,
Cute little dormer.
you should say cute, yeah.
Well, that's, I don't want to use.
Architects don't like that word.
I'm torn
Anybody
between-
else?
I'm torn between the benefit of cute and the distraction of busy.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened to the whole building 100 years ago. Cute and busy.
I just wanted one more comment about
Certainly.
the one thing concerns me is about the Oculus, that if it's understated and everything, it's great. I just hope we don't end up with a plexiglass bubble, a white bubble or something like that. And that's what concerns me, that as long as we don't end up with some kind of,
Jetsons?
fiberglass, thing up there, then I think, as long as we're not horrified, I think it'll be all right.
Okay.
As long as we're not horrified.
I think the concept and the thought and the idea we have on paper is great. I think we need to refine the design just a little bit more to get enough positive feedback from you all to for everyone to be comfortable with it. So I think that's something that we
It
can
is going to
continue
be
to work
interesting how
on.
you're going to glaze it, round.
How's it gonna shed water?
I think the way I see that going is I think it would be prefabricated, something that ends up getting
Yeah, certainly.
getting
I think that,
set in place.
Nick would like to ask a question.
I just wanted to see what your research determined from the last meeting. I remember a few members expressing some concern about the diameter of the Oculus. And that maybe it was Karen Moore, being familiar with what was at 129 Daniel, which I saw as well. Our recollection of oculi is that they're typically half that size. So I wondered, in terms of the diameter, what did your research determine, and what defined maybe this size versus something smaller?
Yeah, so the research in this size, I think, are two different approaches. I think as far as the research goes, to reinforce what you said, 3 feet, 4 feet, smaller in diameter than what you may see here. What this diameter does for us is, if you go back to the roof plan, I think it's complementary to the radius staircase in the space down below. I think if it were too much smaller, its effect in that area wouldn't be as great. You know, and like I said, we're still refining the design, and I think we'll have to continue the discussion and figure out what is going to work and what is the right fit for this.
So just to follow up, what do you actually see for an answer to the last set of questions about how it's capped? Is it a dome? Is it pitch glass? What's above that copper?
So
what might you see?
So I see that being prefabricated by someone, maybe a skylight manufacturer, someone in that department, where it has the slightest bevel or dome to it. Not something you'd pick up with your eye, just enough so that water wouldn't pond on there. And it would come sealed, top and walls. It would get set into the roof, flashed in, and then the lead-coated copper would come right up the sides.
So pretty flat.
Yeah, I don't see it being a bubble or a dome at all, just the slightest pitch to shed the water.
I can't point to it, but I've seen fragments of the remains of one that were pitched like the pitch of the roof on the top. In other words, two windows mitered together on the ridge of the building. So they end up having very little visual profile from the street because they're the same pitch as the roof itself. But that's
Almost like a skylight.
almost like a sky, like you're butting two skylights together. Yeah.
So you're saying just because the framing
Is
is
round.
round doesn't mean that the top
Anything else has to be.
has to be round. And I think when you make reference to the relationship between the size of the staircase and the oculus above it, I always think of things getting smaller as they go up. So I think having a straight up and down cylinder barrel, a little bit like a silo, might actually not work well for your aesthetics inside. That you might actually want a more steeple type effect.
Carry that slope of the roof.
Well, anybody else have any other comments?
Well, yeah, just one more quick question on A2.2. You've got two different types of door treatments going on. Are those just still options you're looking at, or?
Correct. So those are two options. The one on the right makes note of keeping the existing door and side lights and transom. And I think what we established on the site visit was the architecture of that door plays off the architecture of the roof and that dental molding that you see up above in the pediment. Now, we ran through the exercise of instead of putting a limestone header above the doorway, rather trying a flat pediment. But I think based on our site visit a few weeks ago, I think that the existing one pays homage to what you see up above and throughout it. So that's something we discussed amongst the design team to incorporate.
So sort of leaving it the way it is? Yeah.
I'll say from the site walk, that was one of the things I did notice more, that how that doorway was almost a miniature version of the house itself.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, and it would be sad to lose that. So
Okay.
I like the fact that you are
So we're thinking about leaving it as
keeping
is.
it. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so we have the oculus, we have the door.
Everybody good with the skylights? That was something we discussed.
Yeah, I'm good with those skylights on the front.
And I do understand your Reagan's point on the Oculus, preserving the history, and that is making that the focal point would ruin the history. It would be incorrect. So I walk back my comments on that.
But I'm going to agree with David on the complexity on the back, that little dormer adds. I'm not sure if anybody else is in agreement with us at that time, but it's just something to think about.
Are you supportive of a skylight in lieu or nothing?
I wouldn't mind a skylight being there.
I think a skylight would make it less busy, less.
I think that cute little dormer makes it look like a little garage shed up on top of the roof or something. But anyways, that's me. So is there anybody in the public would like to speak about this? Certainly, come on up and introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, or good evening. Just one morning. My name is Marie Bodie, and I'm a resident at 121 State Street. We are one of the abutters to this site, and I'm gathering from Mr. Adams' comment, you did not receive the package that I submitted to Isaac today?
You did.
Okay.
They did.
We just got it right before the meeting, so.
Okay, so the reference that you are making to the ocular is our home, and I'll start with the tapering effect. We do have a functioning ocular that goes from the first floor outside of Byrne & Carlson Chocolatier all the way up through the roof line. And at the entry of our spiral staircase does continue all along. And I showed in the diagram or photos the existing conditions of that ocular. So, and excuse me, we called it an ocular all these years, and I'm corrected, it's an oculus. But with that being said, I wanted to first state that we as abutters are really quite concerned, and we realized that we received the notice of the first meeting that this applicant submitted to you back in January was withdrawn, and I was surprised today only to look at the agenda for One Congress, which I work for Mark McNabb, to find that this was on the agenda today. We reached out to the Hampshire Development Corp on 2 occasions to try to get updated plans from the January submission, because we have great concerns about what is not being depicted on here, existing conditions to proposed in regards to the height, and referencing back in the package that I submitted to you today, there are minutes to the 2011 submission to the HDC that went through all the way to planning, where Chairman Rykoff, you have commented and quoted as stating some of the issues with regards to the impediments to the windows that Erica Dodge and Buzz Dodge spoke fearlessly about. And there's an email in my packet today from Erica Dodge that continues in those vein. What was then in 2011 expanded to from a small L to a now 2-story addition, now proposing to go up to 3 stories, is incredulous for Sheaf Street. And we call it Sheaf, you may call it Shafe, but it is our front yard, our backyard, our entire community. So I'm quite upset. Thank you for filling my words. So again, in the regards to the oculus, I really think if you look at the photos that we've attached, and maybe it's not historically significant or appropriate, but the 3 buildings, 121, 123, and 129, have all looked very similar in all these decades and hundreds of years. And you have this picture of an oculus hidden behind little tree limbs and branches and whatnot. There are 6 different air intake and exhaust fans and systems on the roof that are not depicted in any of these photos thus far. Someone mentioned about the air conditioning or mechanical systems. Their mechanical systems presently reside on our property, so they have an easement for a present air conditioning capacity, which obviously is not within your purview, but historically in the exterior of the structure, adding all this square footage is ultimately going to require more HVAC. So it should be of some concern, and it should be in some of these work session drawings. Again, I mentioned there's no height, there's no reflection. The photos that I showed today show their vehicle parked in what is now their back door. It can barely fit in that pavement area that you show there. It's only 8 feet 3 inches from the edge of their current building to the edge of that sidewalk granite for Sheaf Street. The arbor that we have and maintain and the flowers that are nicely depicted on that deck are our deck. That arbor is 6 feet 3 inches away from the granite. So this does not, it's beautiful. I love the color scheme, but that is just so much massing for our street. Furthermore, the black clapboard or whatever they're depicting here, It is referenced several times that this is being replaced, or the vinyl is being replaced. Again, this came before the HDC in 2011. You did not approve vinyl siding. That is not vinyl siding. And I'm kind of appalled that 3 out of the 6 of you did the site walk, and everything that was discussed for the site walk was windows and impediments. Nothing to do with the massing, nothing to do with our neighborhood. I really believe that this, to get to this stage in 4 meetings or 3 meetings and never considered this. We here are representing Erica Dodge, as I mentioned, who's a resident on Sheaf Street and owns State Street, the property that you referenced, Mr. Rykoff, or Chairman Rykoff. We are also representing Frank Hiker, who is in Cincinnati, Ohio, who did not know that this event was happening, but he's a resident at 37 Sheaf Street. And my husband, Mark Bodie, is going to speak on behalf, obviously, of himself, but also Dr. Sobel, who has been very outspoken with this HDC in the past about this particular project and others. And so I thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for your service. This is a very important commission, and I know sometimes you probably feel like you're the Rodney Dangerfield of commissions. You never get any respect, but it's a very, very important function, and I'm very committed to history, and I want to give you a little bit of history about this building and that's our street, Sheaf Street. For many years, that was just considered an alley, and Buzzy's name was mentioned, and I think of him very affectionately. And if he was alive, he'd be with me today here. And all of us, unfortunately, we've got an absent crew on our Sheaf Street Association, that we put together local families so that we could rebuild the street, which was full of potholes. And even though the funding was authorized by the city council, they weren't acting on it for 3 years straight. And through our association efforts, we had local lawn parties, we banded together, we wrote to the city council, and we worked slowly to improve what was going on and commented on the renovations that were taking place on the street. While this property is located on State Street, the same street that my wife and I own a building, its viewscape is predominantly on Sheaf Street. The viewing time of this building is very brief, is very narrow. So in considering the architectural elements of this building, one does need to focus on the back. And I hate to call it the back because, as my wife said, well, it's to a lot of people on Sheaf, it's their front. But it is a very, very complicated design, more so than I think is necessary. I also want to point out that when we were here many years ago, there was Betty Wood used to own this building, and she and Jay had rebuilt it and several others, including the building immediately adjacent to ours. And ultimately, she sold it from, as the old saying goes, from somebody out of town. And they said that they want to make all these changes, and lo and behold, they had this big presentation, and our association said, well, the massing is just too big. It's just too big. And this commission agreed. And they had a steady hand and took a step back. And from that, we have established what I believe is regulatory precedent. There is a precedent on that street. There's a precedent in that area with respect to renovations that are done on buildings, not only of significance, but I understand that there's the capacity to do that on this site, but I think that, as my wife pointed out, the massing creates a visual disruption on a street that many people go down. Historic Portsmouth, this is part of their tour. To the left is the Prescott sisters, one of the Prescott sisters' home. And with all due respect, I would have to say that this is a major project masquerading as a small renovation. You can see that evidence visually in that slide there, where, and I'm not faulting the architect at all, but it visually communicates that the setback is greater than it is. Very, very narrow, as Marie pointed out. We were told by the builder that it was going to extend another 2 feet. And I'm a little disappointed. We had hoped to meet with the owner, and unfortunately that was not possible for whatever reasons, to voice not only, to offer input, constructive input with respect to this. I also want to point out in the narrative, it speaks to this as a moderate project. Far from a moderate project when that the entire garage structure is going to be leveled and they're going to be digging a full foundation at the spot, which is the very narrowest on Sheep Street. So directly across from where those garages are now to the beginning of the parking is the narrowest portion of the street. On either ends of the street, there is no parking to enable cars to turn the corner, which the rubbish collection can barely do. But these existing conditions already pose challenges. And my wife and I know that. She had to guide me in backing my car out because it was a car that was somewhat illegally parked. So there is a number of issues that I think go beyond the obvious. And again, I think there are a number of things that I feel positive about regarding the work. The shutters are of no consequence to me. They weren't there before. They were added after. They've changed the paint. And as I said, through subsequent owners, I had to chuckle myself when I was reading some of the comments of the previous work sessions. They said they want to turn this, what used to be a warehouse, into a home. And I said, this has always been a home. Betty Wood lived there. The only thing this building needs is someone who's going to stay put in it. And so that, in closing, let me say that we want to be good neighbors, and we all want to get along. And but the proof is in the pudding. Just looking at that roof line, it's a bridge too far, and I would ask you to re-examine that, as well as some of the other finer points, to be sure that they are what you want them to be, and we all hope they will be. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Very eloquent. Anybody else? Nick? You got...
Doesn't look like it. Nope.
All righty.
Could I just ask a clarification about with a comment that this gentleman has made about the foundation?
Yes.
Is there or is there not, there isn't any reference in your letter to any work under or in the foundation of the existing garage and
Sure.
pedestrian entrance?
So if you jump to sheet A 1.1, it'll show you a basement plan.
Ah,
And on the now current right-hand side is, my understanding, slab on grade, where the parking currently is. And what the owner has proposed is to shift the parking over to the left and allow for excavation of the basement area on the right-hand side.
mm-hmm.
It is partially excavated already. I've been in the basement of the State Street home.
So
State Street portion, I'm going to call it.
is the excavation is going to take place with shovels and picks, or is there, I mean, how is this?
No.
Yeah.
Just like last time.
Is it
Take
going
equipment.
closer to Sheaf Street or no? Is it the same size?
The footprint does push out slightly towards
What is
towards
slightly?
Sheaf Street. I can't give you a dimension right now.
It's on here,
I
though,
can't
right? If
see
I
it
zoom in,
is.
Yeah.
I'll zoom in. Hang on.
I'm
Make
zooming.
sure I'm in the right spot.
24 and 4
You
and a
mean
half.
almost 5 feet? You look at the screen up here.
You've got it up there.
Is this the dimension you're trying to get? Is this the push out?
So right now, it's about 2.5 feet
Here?
further back on the left-hand portion where the garage is now.
Like here?
Yes.
So it's about 2.5 feet.
So it's less than 4 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
half
So
the
the-
distance.
There's no, you're not going to be able to fit any parking in front
No,
of it.
outside. You
No,
can't now and
the
you won't
parking will
later.
be undercover.
Yeah, it would be in the garage.
So in looking at that, your concerns about whether or not the garage is getting too close and whether or not they'll be able to back out, I hate to say, but these are questions that you don't want to ask us. You know, you need to be in
All we're
communication.
asking for is veracity. and truthfulness
Thank you.
From the applicant.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, thank you.
Understood, and as this continues to progress, we will have to visit the various other boards for technical analysis of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Okay.
though, aren't you supposed to provide the heights as is today on the roof line and the existing conditions versus the proposed conditions for the HDC to consider?
Yeah, they're going to need to do that to file for a public hearing, which they're not at.
I don't
They're
see
welcome
just a
to do
work
it now.
Okay.
I can tell you right now.
It's way below what's allowed, but that doesn't mean it's shown, but they need to show it. But you're not going to find a zoning violation for building height based on what I'm looking at.
No, I'm not considering it a violation, but I think in the consideration for you all on massing, it does not appear as much higher, but it obviously is going to be much higher. So unless you have those dimensions for even your review today,
Well, we don't
it
have
seems
them.
sort of misleading to have gotten to 3 meetings, and they have one diagram that shows in a 1/4-inch scale and one that's in an 1/8-inch scale. So again, we asked for plans, and I think Jeremy.
You're not
is-
wrong. The
Okay.
scale's on there. It can be measured. It can be done a lot clearer. It'll be clearer.
Okay.
And I wouldn't assume everybody here can't look at drawings and determine what's the difference between existing and proposed. That's a little presumptuous. But it could be a lot clearer, and it will be for the next meeting. In fact, we will get given the commentary and the concern, we'll get the graphics file from the architect, and we'll insert it in the model. So you can see it in relation to other buildings, because there is no requirement to do the neighborhood in order to do it relationally with the other buildings. So the best way to do that is with the 3D model. And the reason this is labeled a moderate project is because you were just here to see what a major project is, which is a 100-room hotel with a 50,000 square foot. We only have 3 categories. It doesn't mean this is inconsequential because it's labeled moderate. So I just want to clear the air there.
Is there one other thing we could ask for in the next round of plans, and that be a shadow study on how this is going to impact our?
That model will actually
Okay.
Do that in the
enable us
model.
to do that. So yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So, can we have a motion to
You want to come back in a month?
come back next month, or?
I'd like to come back next month to a public hearing if you guys are
So
amenable
it
to
seems
it.
like if you're going to do that, not to speak for John, but
Okay.
maybe you do a work session / public hearing.
Yes.
So we have an opportunity to continue the work session if we're at a point where there's no consensus in moving to a hearing. But we'll make sure when you file, if you're going to do that.
Yes.
You get us, we need the 3D model.
3D model, you're going to need
And
some
you
technical
have your
information.
architect add all the dimensions for the ridge, the mean, the eaves.
Yes.
And I would suggest that maybe you encourage your client to talk to the neighbors.
And if he files for a work session / public hearing, everybody gets re-noticed for the second time. You only get a notice at the beginning of the work sessions, any continuance, that's why we do it at date certain. We don't just say they're gonna come back anytime. We say you're coming back next month, and if they don't come back next month, there's a motion, as you've heard tonight, to postpone people that need more time than a month to prepare their next set of drawings. There's only 2 legal notices for projects that have work sessions and public hearings, which is this one. So there will be one more notice. Should he and his team
Yeah.
prepare an application for a public hearing, and there's no guarantee that it won't require more than 1 meeting to come to a conclusion.
We can appreciate that, Nick, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
good.
your
Thank you.
clarification. And I know that, whether it's mod,
Yeah, come to the mic if you're gonna.
Yeah,
talk,
if
please.
you want this to be recorded.
it's, To us, it's a big project.
Yeah.
You know, and then there are logistical issues. The
I
huge
respect that.
dump
I
to
just-
pouring all that. This, in our minds, is big, B-I-G. So,
Because you live next
Just
door.
want everybody else to know.
yeah, okay.
When you're referencing.
We'd be happy to sit down with the architect.
Yeah.
I
Nothing
would
would please
encourage
us
you to do
more.
I can
Shane.
certainly remember, as far as big projects go, Mr. Sorbell's project. And that was tremendous. So that's all I'll say at this point. Okay. All right, that's okay. All right.
So should I move to
Yeah.
close the work session? If that's what,
You want to work session?
No, the
hearing?
work session is going to continue next
No.
month.
Public hearing?
Why don't you
With a public
continue it,
hearing.
and if you don't need it because you're going to file for a hearing, then you will be able to withdraw that.
Okay.
That way, you can go back and talk to the rest of your team, given everything that's been said,
Okay.
all right,
and not be locked out of coming back here for a work session.
fine. So I move that we continue the work session just in case to next month.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those against?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need a break, or does everybody want to continue? Okay.
May I just present for a different matter, Mr. Cracknell? And
what happened?
so I was under the impression that we had withdrawn for the 1 Congress Street work session, and I did confirm with Tracy Kozak. Excuse me, pardon me.
Postpone.
Postpone.
Oh, it
Postpone.
just
So-
didn't, okay.
So can we take your request as a request tonight to postpone?
Yeah.
That way, there's no need.
Yes,
to-
so I'm now presenting on behalf of Marie Bodie, McNabb Properties, Executive Vice President, and we would request that for some reason the paperwork did not get through, and we had requested a postponement
Got it.
till next
So
month.
make a motion to that effect.
Yes, a motion to that effect.
Thank you.
Move to postpone
So, next month?
one Congress
Do you have a
Street?
second? Second. Yeah. Give it the vote.
Yeah, let's have a vote on that.
Aye.
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 All right, break?
Yeah. We take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
We have one more?
One more.
One more.
Here's our discussion.
He's got thumbs up.
Work to postpone. Okay. Is this 85, Dan? What is this, right?
Indeed.
Indeedy. I want to get my screen back up here again. All righty, we're back. Up. Good enough. This is a work session requested by ELG, an LLC owner for property located at 85 Daniel Street, wherein permission is requested to allow new construction to an existing structure, remove and replace rear addition, and remove and replace roof with new dormers, and renovations to an existing structure, replace the windows, siding, trim, and front stoop as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 8 and lies within Character District 4 and Historic Districts. Okay, who's here? And you have to introduce yourselves. Sorry.
No problem. Mark Giannini from McHenry Architecture. I'm here with Richard Desjardins, also from our office, the property owner and applicant, Andy Rutter, and our builder, Donald Diggin.
All righty, guys. What do you got?
So I'm going to kick off the presentation.
Besides Emilio's.
Yes, formerly Emilio's. So I'm going to just quickly go over the building history, a lot quicker than what is shown right here. But essentially, when this building was originally built, it was for the Methodist Church. It was supposed to be a chapel for their Sunday school. That was in 1859, and then in 1890 it sold to become essentially a tenement house, and ever since then it's been used for mostly residential, and in recent years it's been Emilio's and several other businesses on the first floors. And between the sales, there has been a series of renovations and alterations. However, it's pretty unclear between maps and images what actually has happened throughout its lifetime. And to preface the presentation on our proposed changes, two things that we do want to get good feedback on is essentially the dormers and the addition, before we head into this. And if we go to sheet A1, you'll see the actual building. So this is located on Daniel Street, and it's in quite a condition that needs some repairs. So our intention is to patch and repair the siding on the front of the building. Essentially the front of the building is going to be remaining intact with some painting and patching of the trim. And one thing that will be changing is in the top right is this faux brick asphalt siding. That will be removed and replaced with hopefully some wood clapboards that are underneath the asphalt siding.
That's become historic now.
It's true.
Yeah, maybe.
That's not even funny.
Looks pretty good.
Is it far enough away from the building next door that you can put wood?
Yes, so we're just over 3 feet.
So it'll have to be hardy if you're not 5.
Well, the intent is, we'll get into more of the details, but the intent is to repair and replace the existing clapboards that are underneath all that.
Yeah. Is it 3 feet for combustible material or 5?
I'll have to check on the combustible material. It's 3 feet for openings.
Okay.
You know,
Good,
so that
that'd
we
be
can-
great.
Yeah.
So moving forward on sheet A2, you'll see essentially a bunch of contextual images up and down Daniel Street. And on the bottom left, you'll see the old Connie Bean Center and the Cambridge Trust building. This is essentially where we got some of our inspiration for the dormers, setting them back, reducing the visual appearance of them. and continuing to move forward, A3, more contextual photos, more or less from the street face, as well as Custom House Lane, which is more or less the rear alleyway, which you get to see the rear addition, or the former rear addition, and to the right are two historical images that we were able to find through the Athenaeum. And one of the more important sheets that we have in this package is A4. This is from the 1949 Sanborn map, showing that there used to be a fairly substantially large garage in the back, actually larger than what we're proposing. Unfortunately, we were not able to find any images of this, and prior to this map, there have actually been smaller garages dating back to the 1920 at the earliest, and then it was pretty unclear as to why it was removed and when it was removed. And I will hand it over.
Where is this map again?
1949?
Yep, 1949.
The one with the garage on the
Yep.
back? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys looked at all the Sanborn maps?
Yes.
Yep.
Continuing on from there, we'll kind of talk more about the building and some of the changes, like Richard mentioned. A5 is really just to give you an idea of the demolition. We are planning on reorganizing the interior for the new use. And the rear addition that's there now, which is about 16 feet by 6, we're planning on removing. Moving on to A6, you can see some of these in the elevation, some of these spaces. Like Richard had mentioned in the contextual photos, the side elevation here, the east elevation, that's all currently the asphalt siding. There's also a number of windows that have been boarded up. The windows have been completely removed and they've been infilled with plywood. Most of the windows on the sides, the east and west elevation, as well as the south elevation, are all, from what we can tell, replacement windows. So there's really not a lot of historic significance to those. Looking at the north elevation, we're really trying to keep most of that intact, as Richard mentioned, repair and replace siding, trim, some of the detailed work around the front entrance. The windows, we are talking about replacing those. We can get into more detail of that as we move on. And then the roof would be partially removed for the dormers, which we'll see here in the next couple pictures or pages. A7 real quick shows the rear addition, again, the small rear addition that we plan on removing, as well as the chimney that's in the rear. We're planning on taking that down. There are remnants of 4 chimneys when you're on the 3rd floor in the attic. This is the only one that's remaining, but from what our in-house historical expert, Steve, thinks it's a replacement chimney at some point because of the additional detail that's been added. There's like terracotta medallion that's on 2 of the sides. So,
still pretty cool.
Yes. On A8 is the proposed layouts that we're looking at. As I mentioned, we were reconfiguring these. So in general, the spaces are planning on being used as 2 residential units with either a live-work in the front or a leasable office space. On the first floor, right now it's just on one side of the dividing partition. And then the addition that we're looking at on the rear of the building. So it's a 27 by 20 approximately square foot addition for the footprint. The first floor will be used as a 2-car garage, one for each unit. On the second floor, there'd be a small living space, bedroom or office with a covered deck off of that. And then the top floor is roof, as well as decks that can be accessed from the 3rd floor of the units. And
why the difference between the left and right unit on the ground floor?
Really only the office space. If you look at the right there along Daniel Street, you got an office space that has a bathroom and closet.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite side of that, it's really just additional, or it's labeled as bonus room, but it's really just additional living space for that.
What made you not do an office over there? That's what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly possible. At this time, we were just looking at,
Possible configurations. Possible configurations for the consideration of your buyer.
yes.
Well, that rolled awfully easily to me.
Very much.
Irrespective of the streetscape.
Yes. I mean, at this point, Andy is looking at, is intending on occupying one side, and he doesn't need as much space. And then obviously, a future purchaser, like you mentioned, or buyer, we're giving them the option, at least at the moment, to have additional living space.
It's going to be a nice space.
This is outside, probably because of Buzzy Dodge, the downtown overlay district. And so it's an oddity that
Right.
this entire block allows residential on the ground floor, which is inconsistent with what's there. And it's going to, I fear, move in this direction as they move down the street with the next two buildings that are abutting it, that are currently on the market, and probably going to transition to the highest and best use, which is not going to be commercial. So it's going to be a very different feel on Daniel Street when these are done.
And just because I don't know anything at all, what did Buzzy do wrong?
Well, there's a downtown overlay district that covers probably 2/3 of the downtown, and it requires ground floor uses to be non-residential. And there were areas carved out of that zoning amendment when it was proposed that include Daniel Street, State Street, and Sheaf. And the Connie Bean is in it, so it's actually a carve-out. So it probably wasn't just Buzzy, but I know he was part of protecting residential uses on the ground floor for maybe even his own building on State Street.
Thank you very much for the clarifying that. It was
What was
never-
he on? Was he on the
I don't think he was
HDC,
on.
or was he on?
No, he was just opinionated.
Force.
Just a
He was a
bully.
force, yeah. Yeah, he was a smart guy.
Very good.
But-
Well, it's just, I think it's the way it's going to be heading, because it seems to me that a lot of, your brick and mortar stores are sort of dying out a little bit. I hate to say that.
Well, but the district isn't getting larger.
Cute little pharmacy and have little.
So that carve-out's been done.
It could
It's
be
not gonna-
reversed, yes. I mean, we just for conversation, that the Connie Bean gym was not in it, and we added it. And I think we might have added, 77 State Street was maybe the impetus for the Connie Bean, because 77 State Street that replaced the Exxon gas station put parking on the ground floor,
Yes.
which is, again, not allowed in the DOD. This could be a garage all the way out to Daniel Street.
Wow.
Which would be obviously a shame, and that's not what they're proposing, but you wouldn't be able to do that if it was in the DOD.
Okay, we're getting a little off hand here. Okay,
Just wondering.
All right, so our proposed changes.
yeah, let's make it a parking garage.
Yes.
The heck
Don't give
with
us
it.
any ideas.
Right?
A Victorian parking garage. Any comments on this end? Have you finished that?
I mean, if you want, I can run, there's just a couple more pages.
Yeah.
On A9, these are now into the proposed elevations. So again, on the north elevation, for the most part, keeping everything intact that's there now, except for the window replacements. The dormers, as was mentioned earlier, that we're adding proposed to the third floor, are stepped back about 5 feet from every direction. So there's less presence when you're at the street view, which you'll see in some of the renderings further on. And we're proposing 2 chimneys on the front of the building. These would be replacement replica chimneys, but they would be used to service the gas fireplaces that are proposed inside the units.
Very good, thank you.
And then on the east elevation there, you can see the side of the rear addition that's being proposed. Again, 2 stories with a roof deck that's partly concealed by the hip roof. The hip roof is at the same pitch as the main roof of the original building. A10 is the south elevation, or the rear of the building. Again, looking at the addition, the 2-car garage. the decks at the second floor that are covered, as well as the open deck on the top floor. There's an entrance on either side of the garage with a little slight that's covered. Those go into the garage and then access to the units from the rear. And then the west elevation is similar to the east. Moving on from there are really just the next couple of pages. Don't need to go into any detail, but they're renderings of the proposed on the next 2 or 3 pages, including the rear on A11. And then beyond that is proposed product data for the proposed windows, light fixtures, railings, which I can go over if you want, but
that's all right.
Self-explanatory.
Really pretty much into massing at this point.
Yep.
How big are the units?
They're roughly 2,000 square feet each.
So have you got enough parking? Is there a car that fits outside the garage as well as in? Good.
Yes, we need 3 parking spots.
And you got 4.
Yep.
Good.
All righty. Comments, questions, answers? Buddy?
We'll go. So I really like that you're keeping the front of the building on the Daniel Street. Obviously, that's what everyone will see. That's what everyone. My only worry on that side, that elevation, would be the dormers. I think. Obviously you showed proof that there used to be a garage there in the back, and that back addition. I don't think it's impacting anyone. I think it fits with the massing. I think it, you wouldn't even see it from Daniel Street. But I guess my only thing would be the increase of the massing from the dormers. But I love that you guys are placing everything pretty much in kind. I bought a lot of calzones in that front entrance as a child. But this is obviously a special building for Portsmouth. But yeah, those are my initial comments.
Can you look at the screen? There's a lot of chimneys here. Are they all, what are you proposing to do with the chimneys?
There are 2 chimneys.
So
Yeah,
are they
taking down
both
one.
staying?
No, those
Down
don't
one.
exist.
They don't, they what?
Those 2 don't exist.
Yes, so if you look at
So you're adding those 2?
We're adding those 2.
Got it.
We're adding those 2.
You're
They're
a veneer chimney? and-
Yes. So there's
I missed that.
So on A3, Rich was going to point out in one of the photos from 82, there's 2 chimneys in the front, and then when you're in the 3rd floor, kind of in the knee wall space, there's evidence that there were 4 chimneys at one point. But they were all 3
Need a
of them.
good detail for that when you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'm not a huge fan of the dormers or the pair of dormers, but I think in my mind, I'm weighing this out, and I think it's a small price to pay for the preservation of the rest of the building. I appreciate the setting the dormers back from the eaves edges. I think that's a good move. I even appreciate you breaking the eave of the dormers so that they don't look like somehow there's a bowling alley up there or something. I think that's all pretty successful. I appreciate the detailing that you put in the little hood over the rear side door. The hood over the garage doors is a nice homey little touch I'm very comfortable with. I think that this is a heck of a commitment to the neighborhood. Just having this place, which is indeed in need of some TLC, and this looks like a good use for it. If there's one thing I have some heartburn over, it's the crooked demising wall between the 2 units on the deck and the back. That's
The sloped one on the roof?
It tapers down.
it's just, come on.
I agree with that.
Come on.
We can call it the fin.
Yeah, no, we can't.
So
Call it the thing that's not going to happen.
I agree. I don't like it. So I had a thought that I
Come
haven't
on.
shared with you guys yet.
Was that a joke?
The thought that I had was we decrease the height of that and widen it just a touch enough to add planters along the top of it, and then we can do some kind of a green wall to divide the 2 sides.
Architecturally, if you could somehow get your 14, 16-foot stilts on and stand right beside the building, it does fill in the shape of the missing building on the back, but only in that artificial condition. To the right.
Some kind of grill.
Yeah. Anyway,
Open us to it.
maybe this is just me being comfortable, but I've seen this sort of stuff done. I think it's going to be appropriate for the building. The building can handle it just fine. And it means that we get to keep this modest-scaled building there on the side of Daniel Street. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Rick.
Yeah, I echo a lot of the comments. You're saving this building and doing a lot of restoration, which is wonderful. I would actually like to see the dormers being set back even more, just because I still feel in the renderings, when you're looking at it, they still really do pop out there. And so I don't know if you can just bring it back like one window bay or something like that, or break it up a little bit more. Yeah, I also appreciate that it's not just the full shed, elevation all the way on the side, but that is broken up a little bit. But if you could set it back as much as possible, I think it would really help the facade there. I'd also really like to encourage you to look at the restoration of your historic windows, because they, I haven't gone up to look, put my face up into the storm windows or anything and look at the condition of them, but they look substantial, and they're definitely historic, and they definitely retain the historic nature of the facade. So if you can look into restoring them at all, I don't want to see a beautifully restored facade here with replacement windows. But otherwise, I think, yes, looking at the, historic precedent for massing for a garage in the back, all of that stuff is, in my opinion, acceptable and appropriate. I would also, as you might have heard in our previous application, you might want to make sure that you're cool with the neighbors. Talk to the neighbors, engage them, make sure that they're cool with that, or at least, talk to them. So,
Yep. And Andy has talked to some of the owners, neighbors, and so far they've all been supportive of it, so.
Because it will be a bit disturbing for that little alley. I think the press room went through hell and high water for a long time there.
Yeah.
Anybody else here?
Yes.
Yes.
So I had concerns about the effect in the back alley, but have decided to leave that to the technical team to decide whether there's enough room for cars and garbage trucks and fire trucks and everything like that. I agree with Reagan. I would really like to see the dormer set back a little more. I don't think it's an issue on the right side, the west side, because there's the other building sitting right there, but there is quite a view from the other side. And so pushing them back, I think, would be a really good idea. I also agree with the replacement windows. My question is the stairs. You're replacing these wooden stairs with a combination of brick and granite. Could you talk about why you chose those materials, historic precedent, anything that you can tie to as to why you chose those? Because there's nothing on the street to look up and down that block. There really isn't anything else except for the one other set of wooden stairs.
Yeah.
It's unique.
So our intention was more or less to tie it into the brick foundation, was to have them more or less like connect by having in the granite as well, like granite steps we thought fit in well with the brick. We weren't really able to, we didn't find any historical precedent. There's actually quite a lack of photos before the 80s of this building. So we don't know what could have been there previously. The wood porch in and of itself needs to be replaced anyways, as it's in pretty bad condition as right now.
This is sort of a unique building because it is above the sidewalk level, and that is very rare, not only on this street, but practically in downtown. Unless it's a residence, that has
for the back.
a brick residence.
Yeah, and the stairs that are there seem to be just kind of basic pressure-treated wood. That's nothing special. We wanted to kind of dress it up a bit and thought the brick, like you had mentioned, looked consistent with the rest of the building.
And eventually we'll get some detail on the railings and things like that.
Yeah, there are product data on the back of the proposed railing.
I think she's talking.
Oh,
about
the front.
The front railings are. We're just gonna
reuse the iron railings that are there.
I'll take a closer look at them next time.
No, display. Yeah.
It appears as if those have been the railings for quite some time.
I had that thought, maybe that's why there was no photos.
Okay, anyone else?
May I just, two more
certainly.
comments, sir? Well, before you come back, I think it'd be useful for everyone to have a live photograph of the front of the building that you could paste the dormers onto, so that we could get something, because I'm not saying that architects are trying to confuse people, but it's not always, when we're measuring scale, to get a vantage point. My idea of a good vantage point isn't always the same as yours. But if we could have a photograph from, 5 foot from across the street, so that we could all look at that and have say, this is what the dormers are going to actually look like.
Three-dimensional.
And next is, on the data sheet, I saw that you're proposing elevate for the replacement and new windows on the building. I know very little about this stuff, but sometimes the elevate windows come in a package with plastic trim. And you can see what I'm doing right now, right?
Yeah.
It seems like the cheesiest part of the product. Would it be your intention to use that sort of stuff? Doing this?
No.
They're waving, they're
Okay, you understand what I'm talking about, Mr. Chairman?
Exactly.
No, we wouldn't want to use any, it would really just be the frame and
Okay.
not any of the trim accessories that they provide.
Okay, all right, thank you. I saw them on your cut sheet and thought maybe they were put there for a reason, like for me to see.
Yeah.
That would not be a replacement in kind.
You're correct about that, but they are putting new windows in the building too.
Yeah. So the front windows would have the trim exactly the
Sure.
same.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the trim around any new windows would be similar in profile and material?
To the existing, yes.
Which is more or less like a flat stock on the sides and the rear.
Mark, would it be worth me going over my thoughts on the windows and the research
Certainly.
I've done yet, or not yet?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. So we did look into keeping the existing windows on the street side and wanted to try to do that, and thought it was a good idea. We had the asbestos sample throughout the building. I guess the glazing is all asbestos around the original windows. When I talked to Dennis, I guess they don't work on windows that have asbestos glaze.
Wimps.
Wait, I don't understand where the asbestos is in a window.
In the glaze around the windows.
Glazing?
Yeah.
No, for God.
So that was part of it, and then there were a couple other thoughts that we had too. One being with the thin glass and just the 2-pane windows that are set up a foot from the floor, we were worried about needing tempered glass from a code standpoint there, and didn't know how that would play in.
And also
I think your existing windows get exempt from that, I think.
But we were just worried about a little kid, up against these windows.
Well,
and
worst
things
case,
like
you'd
that.
go buy tempered glass and put it in there, and they'd be re-putting.
Yeah.
Or the second way of handling it is to have a panel,
Yeah,
an inside panel that you would make that would put it right, on the windows.
Interior.
Every house in the district has that problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
But,
somehow my children survived
Yeah.
with their historic windows.
They're tough New England children.
somehow my daughter survived. I was up scraping my house every other year.
So the lead paint was gone early.
Paint was going all over.
You have to talk over them.
Sorry.
But the asbestos glaze was a thing that we kind of got stuck on
Yeah.
as well. So I don't know.
All right,
Just never-
talk to some, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah,
not
you've
that
got to
it has
talk to
anything
somebody else, I think.
There's other people that may. do that.
They'll restore those
I mean,
windows.
there's lead paint on every one of these windows. So.
Yeah, well, no, and
And they work on 'em.
I know Dennis and Tom, and, we work with them all the time, so if they are hesitant about it, then it gives me pause too, because they're not afraid to work with lead, but
Yeah.
asbestos, I can understand that. So that's just weird. But maybe also look at some other options than the Marvin.
What about if we, maybe more of like a Green Mountain window for the
Yeah.
front?
Yeah, maybe not metal clad.
Yeah, maybe a.
Yeah, no, a wood window.
Maybe a wood window for the facade. I don't even really care about the sides and the back. It's that facade is beautiful, and it's so intact, and I can't wait to see it restored.
Yeah, Green Mountain's good one.
Green Mountain, LePage, there are some good wood
Yeah,
windows.
we do get quotes from Green Mountain for the front, so it's good to know.
Okay. So, are you feeling that you want to come back for another work session, or what do you feel of the,
I mean, I guess if you guys felt it was appropriate, maybe a work session / public hearing.
you do that?
Yeah, you using SketchUp or?
We're using
3D Max?
Revit.
Revit.
Is there?
Let's get it in our 3D model before you come back.
So the buildings next to it are actually from the 3D model.
Yep.
Understood, I want to get this one in our model.
So that we can use it to
You send the
browse.
Revit file.
Oh, so in
We'll insert it
in
into the
your
model.
okay.
Yeah, now
I
you can do
understand
shadow
now.
studies,
Yep.
all, everything.
Because there
you
is some
uploaded.
concern over the dormers.
Yep.
Yes.
That's understandable. I
Really
wasn't
can't
sure what
see
you were
it
asking.
until we can see it.
Yep.
And I
Got the
think
technology, let's use it.
Yeah, everything else played out pretty well. There was some concern about the stairs, the steps. I don't know how you guys are feeling over on the right-hand side.
Let's just see what they bring us.
Yeah.
Is there any chance of getting any type of extension for the submission for next month, since it's tomorrow at 1 o'clock?
Oh.
With the holiday, and since
Don't
we got
you want
bumped
to
a
stay
week-
up all night?
You can submit
gonna have
tomorrow
call.
with this, and we can give you a few days to replace it
Okay.
to next week.
What's
Once the
what's a few
advertising
days?
is, well, Thursday's when the ad goes out next week.
Yeah, okay.
So Thursday would be your deadline. So you'd have a week
Yep.
from now.
And we could just withdraw it.
No, we'd substitute, we'd add your new drawings.
Oh well, if we
did
can't
make-
get all of our answers by Thursday, for instance.
Next Thursday?
Postpone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Or come in and do the work session and.
Right.
And not the public hearing portion.
Yep.
Once you file.
You've got no life anyway, right?
Nope.
Architects.
So do you want a motion to continue the work session in case you don't file tomorrow? And if you file tomorrow, they'll just nullify
Okay.
that.
So let's make this motion.
Motion to continue?
Seconded?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Proceed.
Thank you very much for the
Thank
input.
you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Andy, thank you for.
Gosh, a very complete.
Sometimes there's nothing
Oh,
to say.
you want to have the,
We got one down here. A motion to adjourn.
Oh.
We need a second.
second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.